My discovery shook me to the core. My husband was having an affair. Luxury brand gifts were being showered upon his mistress, all paid for with my credit card. For the sake of our son, I endured silently, but the weight became unbearable. I knew I had to take action. Unexpectedly, the person who came to my aid was the last one I imagined. I am Alexa, 35 years old, married to Austin for a decade. Our son Drake turned 8 this year. With a passion for writing, I turned novelist, fulfilling the lifelong dream. My debut mystery novel found success, leading to regular serialization and a busy schedule. Initially, Austin worked, but he quit when my writing became profitable. For the past few years, he spent his days idly, occasionally gambling. So when he dressed in a suit one day, claiming a job interview, I sensed something awry. "Why the suit?" I asked, catching him off guard. He hesitated before saying, "I have an interview." "For what?" "A job," he replied, a bit too quickly. Wishing him luck, I let him go, believing in his intention to change for our family's future. Yet when he returned at 1 a.m., reeking of alcohol and perfume, asleep on the sofa with his unlocked phone in hand, my curiosity overwhelmed me. I couldn't resist the urge to peek into my husband's smartphone. What's this?" I couldn't believe my eyes. It was undeniable. My husband was cheating. Even more shocking was his affair with my close friend, Ashley. They had been to a luxurious restaurant known for its stunning night views. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. No way. Austin and Ashley. Why? Ashley had a husband too. I had trusted them both. Confronted with this unexpected truth, tears welled up uncontrollably. I tried to stifle my sobs, not wanting to wake Austin. But I needed evidence. Quietly, I transferred proof of the affair to my own phone, unsure of what to do next. The next morning, Austin acted as if nothing had happened. "Hey, Austin, about yesterday," I began cautiously. "Yesterday," he replied casually. "You mean when I said I had an interview but came home late?" I couldn't help but wonder what had really happened. My husband averted his eyes as if searching for an excuse. "Well, actually I ran into a friend after the interview, so we ended up grabbing a drink." "A friend? Who?" "Someone you don't know. I don't have to explain everything, do I?" "Yeah, you're right." As expected, my husband concealed his meeting with Ashley. His demeanor made it clear he was having an affair. 1 month after discovering his infidelity, I remained uncertain of my next steps. I hadn't confronted him yet. I couldn't bring myself to. If I did, I knew it would spell the end of our marriage. If it were just me, I would have presented the evidence and filed for divorce immediately. But I couldn't bear to take Drake's father away from him. He was only 8 years old. During my confinement to our room, working away, Austin began going out more frequently. Yet this gave me a chance. I resolved to gather evidence of his affair while he was out. Searching through his belongings, I found several unfamiliar receipts. Apparently, he had purchased luxury items for women, but of course, those items were nowhere to be found in our room. I hadn't received those gifts from him either. There was only one explanation. Austin was giving Ashley those branded items. But where was he getting the money for that? He had been unemployed for some time, relying solely on the allowance I gave him each month. He shouldn't have had any savings left. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to confront my husband. In the meantime, I called my brother over and asked him to look after my son. Of course, my brother was unaware of Austin's affair, so I fabricated a reason. "Sorry for calling you over so suddenly." "No problem, but what's going on? You said you need me to look after Drake." "Well, actually, there's something I really need to shop for alone." "Shopping? You're not usually so materialistic. You usually shop online." "I know, but today I need to buy something that's only available in store. Can you watch Drake for me?" "Sure, but don't be too late. Drake will miss you." "Thanks, I'll be quick." With my brother's help, I managed to tail Austin. Soon enough, I caught him walking arm in arm with my best friend, Ashley. Witnessing it firsthand was a shock despite my suspicions. They entered a luxury brand store together, and then I saw something unbelievable. "No way, are you kidding me? That's my credit card." Indeed, the card my husband was using to pay for their shopping spree belonged to me, a secondary card I often used. Normally, I kept my main credit card in my wallet, but the secondary card had been left in my drawer. Without my permission, my husband had taken it to pay for Ashley's gifts. Over the past few months, I had made significant purchases for work, monitors, keyboards, even furniture, using that card. The accumulated expenses were substantial. Both cards shared the same bank account, and with my hectic schedule, I hadn't checked the card details recently. It had come back to haunt me. I couldn't believe it. Not only was he cheating, but he was also using my money without my knowledge. My love for him evaporated instantly. I blamed myself for not paying closer attention, but even so, forgiveness was out of the question. I gathered ample evidence, snapping countless photos of them together, before returning home in a daze. For the next few days, I obsessed over ways to retaliate against my husband. Whenever he was out, I meticulously combed through his PC. His smartphone and PC were since making it easy to scrutinize his exchanges with Ashley. Eventually, I discovered they were planning a trip during the upcoming holidays, a 4-day getaway. This is my chance, I thought grimly. I decided to exact my revenge during the same time as my husband's affair trip. However, there was one major obstacle: our son. Completing my revenge plan without Drake finding out about his father's affair would be challenging. So, once again, I turned to my brother for help. I hate to ask, but could you look after Drake during the upcoming holidays? The holidays? You mean all 4 days? Yes, I have something important to take care of. Something important, huh? My brother replied with a knowing tone. His words made me uneasy. Alexa, stop trying to handle everything on your own. What do you mean? Austin's cheating, isn't he? How did you? I heard it from Drake. What? Drake? My young son had somehow sensed his father's affair, despite his tender age. He might not have fully understood the situation, but he knew his father's closeness to someone other than me was hurting me deeply. I thought I was hiding it so well from Drake. Why? It means Austin's actions are hurting you enough for Drake to notice, my brother reasoned. Are you really going to stay with someone who hurts you like this? But if I divorce Austin, Drake will be devastated. Just then, as if on cue, Drake appeared from the next room. It's okay, Mom. I'm on your side. Drake, are you sure? I don't need anyone who makes Mom sad. As long as I have Mom, it's okay. Thank you, Drake, and thank you too, brother. With the support of my son and brother, I resolved to seek revenge on my husband without hesitation. On the day my husband planned to leave for his affair trip, Drake and I quietly packed our belongings. My brother assisted us covertly while my husband was away. The night before his departure, I decided to give him one last chance. Austin, what's with the suitcase? Why are you packing? Oh, this? I'm going on a trip with some friends starting tomorrow. A trip? You never mentioned that. It was a sudden plan. It's not a big deal. I'll cover it with my monthly allowance. My husband exuded an aura of don't talk to me, clearly avoiding further inquiry. But I was undeterred. In a tone rarely used, I confronted him softly yet firmly. Hey, are you sure it's just with your friends? He visibly panicked, his shoulders tensing. Still, he clung desperately to his lie. Of course, you've been quite persistent, haven't you? All right. I understand. Enjoy your trip with your friends. I was going to enjoy it even if you didn't tell me to. Just don't get too carried away, all right? With that, I left my husband's room. Honestly, if he had just told me the truth, I might have considered an amicable separation, seeking alimony and child support. Despite his betrayal, he was someone I once loved deeply. His support had sustained me during times when my novels didn't sell. I didn't want to harbor true hatred or resentment towards him, but given what had transpired, I couldn't afford to be lenient anymore. For the sake of my son and my own future, I had to bring an end to our relationship. There was no reason for me to hold back now, not after discovering his persistent lies. The next morning, my husband had already left for his trip. I opened the drawer and confirmed that he had taken my credit card as expected. Immediately, I contacted the bank, reported the card as lost, and requested it be deactivated. My son woke up and I greeted him with a cheerful good morning. Mom, it's today, right? Ha! The move. We're going to our new house today, right? Looking at my son's bright smile, any lingering anxiety inside me vanished. Oh, Drake, you're right. I've already stopped the credit card, so let's move to our new home. Yeah, I can't wait for our new place. With my brother's help, our move went smoothly. Our belongings, along with my son's, were settled in our new home, while my husband's things were sent elsewhere the next day. As I relaxed in our new home with my son and brother, my husband called. Hello. Oh, Alexa. What is it? Well, actually, this trip is costing more than I expected. Could you possibly transfer me some money? He was probably struggling to pay for things on his trip because I had frozen the credit card. His indirect request for money disgusted me. Didn't you say you were going within your own budget? Sorry, but I don't have any money to lend you. Oh, don't be like that. If you don't help me, I'll be the only one not enjoying the trip. You mean both of you, right? To that, my husband seemed dumbfounded. Ha! After all, you're on a trip. You want to show Ashley only the good parts, right? But sorry, the card you took is no longer valid. You'll have to manage on your own. What are you talking about, Alexa? In the card. Pretending not to know is pointless. You're panicking too much. Because you're saying nonsensical things. I don't know anything about a card. Enough. I already know you've been cheating on me with my best friend, Ashley. What? Did you really think I had no idea? Are you that dense? It's obvious. No, this isn't what you think. I'm not cheating. I was furious that my husband kept trying to make excuses. Not caring that my brother and son were next to me, I unleashed all the anger I had been holding back. Stop making excuses. You had a family and you had an affair with another woman. On top of that, using someone else's card. Do you realize how despicable your actions have been? Alexa, let's calm down for now. Huh? There's no way I can stay calm when I'm dealing with the person I hate the most in the world, don't you think? And just so you know, I have no intention of forgiving you or helping you. You and the woman you're with can go to hell for all I care. Never show your face to Drake and me again. Saying that, I hung up on my husband. Then his mistress, Ashley, called me. Hey Alexa, what the hell did you do? Ashley, long time no see. How's the trip with my husband? Shut up. Explain yourself. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. You sent Austin's belongings to my house, didn't you? Yes, indeed. When we moved, I sent my husband's belongings to Ashley. But Ashley is a married woman, so of course her husband is at home. That's exactly why I sent all of Austin's belongings to her house, including a long letter explaining everything. She screamed at me over the phone, her voice breaking. This isn't a joke. What did he do? My husband found out, and now he's furious. Well, it serves you right for having an affair while being married. You're supposed to be my friend. This is low. I misjudged you. Excuse me, that's my line. My best friend was having an affair with my husband, you know. How can I forgive that? Who was rude first, huh? I wasn't serious, it was just for fun. There's no way I'd settle for a jobless loser like him. I don't care whether you were serious or not. I'm about to get a divorce anyway. You did have an affair, and that's a fact. I will never forgive you. I will demand a lot of compensation, so brace yourself. Compensation? What's that? I didn't hear anything about that. Well, of course you did. What you deserve. Wait, I'm a housewife. I can't pay any compensation. I don't care. Either figure it out yourself or beg your husband. Well, I doubt that would work though. Oh wait, Alexa, hey, wait. Goodbye. I hung up without listening to her and blocked her number. Afterward, I finalized my divorce through my lawyer and demanded compensation from my ex-husband and Ashley. Alongside child support, I insisted on repayment for the credit card charges he made without my consent. Due to the debts from paying compensation, Ashley's husband demanded a divorce and she was kicked out of their home. She attempted to rely on her parents, but they turned her away given the circumstances. Now, she lives where she works and does night jobs at a bar. Austin tried to lean on Ashley, but she was furious because she had to divorce him. She promptly cut ties with my ex-husband, ending their relationship. Currently, my ex-husband works multiple part-time jobs and lives paycheck to paycheck. After being unemployed for so long, finding a stable job won't be easy for him. If he ever falls behind in alimony or child support payments, I intend to pursue him for the owed amount by any means necessary. As for me, I'm living peacefully in a new home with my son. His growth is remarkable, and every day is truly exciting. I aim to continue giving him lots of love, ensuring he never experiences sadness again.
The day my family branded me a thief started like any other Tuesday at Miller & Sons Financial. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my father's secretary appeared at my office door, her face tight with worry. "Your father wants to see you immediately." I'm Gwendolyn. And until that moment, I thought being the black sheep of the family was the worst it could get. I was wrong. The walk to my father's office felt like a march to the gallows. Through the glass walls, I could see them waiting. My father Abel behind his massive desk, my mother Esme perched on the leather sofa, and my cousin Andrew standing by the window, his arms crossed. "Sit down," my father commanded as I entered. His voice carried none of its usual warmth. "What's going on?" I asked, but the knot in my stomach already knew. My father slid a folder across his desk. "Care to explain the discrepancies in these accounts?" I opened the folder, my hands trembling slightly. Numbers swam before my eyes, transaction records, bank statements, all highlighted in accusatory yellow. "I don't understand. These aren't my accounts." "They're linked to your department," Andrew chimed in, his voice dripping with false concern. "Over $200,000, Gwen." "How could you?" "What?" I stood up so quickly my chair toppled backward. "I haven't touched any money. These aren't even my signatures." "Sit down," my mother snapped. "Stop making this worse than it already is." "Making it worse? I haven't done anything wrong." I looked from face to face, searching for any sign of doubt in their accusations. There was none. "The evidence is clear," my father said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "The transfers were made from your office computer using your login credentials." "That's impossible. Someone must have used my computer when I wasn't there. I would never—" "Enough!" My father's fist came down hard on the desk. "We've already contacted the police." The room spun. "The police? Dad, please, you have to listen to me." "I've listened enough." He stood up, straightening his tie. "You have 1 hour to clear out your office. Consider yourself terminated, effective immediately." My mother's eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was steel. "How could you do this to us? To the family name?" "I didn't do anything," I was screaming now, dignity forgotten. "Andrew, tell them. You know I wouldn't do this." Andrew shook his head, the perfect picture of family loyalty. "I'm sorry, Gwen. The numbers don't lie." Security escorted me to my office. My sister Riley watched from her cubicle as I packed my things into a cardboard box, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. Whispers followed me through the building like poisonous smoke. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Don't come to Sunday dinner. Don't contact us. We need time to deal with this disgrace." I sat in my apartment surrounded by family photos I couldn't bear to look at when my best friend Sandra called. I just heard, "Are you okay?" "They didn't even give me a chance to defend myself," I whispered, my voice breaking. 29 years of being their daughter, and they believed the worst of me in 5 minutes. "This isn't right," Sandra said firmly. "There has to be more to the story." I stared at the family photo on my coffee table. Last Christmas, all of us smiling, Andrew's arm around my shoulders. Something clicked in my mind. "There is," I said, my voice hardening. "And I'm going to find out what it is." Sandra was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" I picked up the photo and turned it face down. "They want to believe I'm capable of stealing? Fine, but I'm going to prove who really did this, even if it tears this family apart. Be careful, Gwen. Revenge isn't always—" "This isn't about revenge," I cut her off, but even I didn't believe that. "This is about justice. And trust me, when I'm done, they'll all know exactly what it feels like to have their world turned upside down." I hung up and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on the search bar like a challenge. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before typing. How to hire a private investigator. The family that cast me out had no idea what they'd just set in motion. They thought they knew me, the troublemaker, the disappointment, the black sheep. But they were about to learn what I was really capable of. And this time, I wasn't going to play by their rules. Sandra's tiny apartment became my sanctuary in the weeks following my exile. I sat cross-legged on her worn couch, surrounded by takeout containers and financial documents I'd managed to save before being escorted out. "You're going to give yourself an ulcer," Sandra said, watching me highlight another suspicious transaction. "Look at this." I thrust the paper at her. 3 separate transfers, all exactly $67,430. Who makes transfers that specific? Someone trying to stay under the $70,000 reporting threshold? Sandra suggested, surprising me with her financial knowledge. Exactly. I circled the dates. And they're all from weeks when Andrew was handling the overseas accounts. My phone buzzed, Riley calling for the third time this week. I declined the call. You should talk to her, Sandra said softly. She might be on your side. There are no sides anymore, just truth and lies. I rubbed my temples. And right now I need proof. Sandra grabbed her laptop. Then let's get you some. I know someone who might help. An hour later, we sat across from Camden Steele in a coffee shop that had seen better days. He looked more like a college professor than a private investigator. Wire-rimmed glasses, rumpled blazer, perpetually messy hair. So, he said, studying the documents spread between our coffee cups, you believe your cousin framed you? I know he did. I leaned forward. But I need proof that will stand up to my father's scrutiny. He thinks Andrew walks on water. Camden's eyes narrowed. Family cases are messy. Are you sure you want to go down this road? They already think I'm a criminal. What else do I have to lose? He took off his glasses, cleaning them methodically. Your retainer is $5,000. I'll need access to any financial records you can get, and a list of Andrew's known associates. I can get you $3,000 now, I said, my savings account screaming in protest. The rest by the end of the month. Deal! He pulled out a contract. But remember, you might not like what we find. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone lit up with a text from Riley. Mum's a wreck. Dad's drinking again. Please just confess and come home. I threw the phone across the room. The next morning, Camden called. I've been reviewing the records. Your cousin's good, but he made mistakes. Small ones. What kind of mistakes? The kind that leave breadcrumbs. Meet me at the office in an hour. Camden's office was a converted industrial space, all exposed brick and metal filing cabinets. He had 3 monitors displaying different aspects of the investigation. See these transactions? He pointed to a spreadsheet. They're all routed through a shell company in Delaware. Guess who registered it? My heart raced. Andrew? Better, Camden grinned. His girlfriend, the one your family doesn't know about. What girlfriend? He pulled up a social media profile. Meet Jessica, corporate lawyer, and Andrew's secret partner for the last year. She registered the company 3 months before the money started disappearing. I stared at the photo of Andrew with his arm around a stunning redhead. My parents think he's still dating that doctor they approved of. People hide things for a reason, Camden said, pulling up more documents. And your cousin's been hiding a lot. My phone buzzed again. My mother this time. The voicemail was what I expected. The police want to press charges. If you confess now, we can work something out. Please, Gwendolyn, don't make this worse. I deleted the message and turned to Camden. How fast can we build a case? Give me 2 weeks. But Gwendolyn? His expression turned serious. Once we start this, there's no going back. Your family will never be the same. I thought about Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, the way Andrew always got the benefit of the doubt while I got suspicious glances. I thought about my father's disappointment and my mother's tears. Good, I said, my voice steady. Because the family they think they have is already a lie. Camden nodded, turning back to his monitors. Then let's get to work. That evening, Sandra brought over wine and pizza. You okay? I showed her the growing evidence on my laptop. For the first time since this started, I actually am. We found something, Sandra. Something big. She squeezed my hand. Just be careful. Revenge can consume you. This isn't just revenge anymore, I said, staring at Andrew's smiling face on my screen. This is justice. And when I'm done, they'll all know exactly what it feels like to have their trust betrayed. I closed my laptop, but not before saving Jessica's photo. Andrew's perfect mask was starting to crack, and I was going to rip it off completely, no matter what it cost me. Camden's car smelled like coffee and old books as we sat outside Jessica's law firm, watching people stream in and out of the glass building. Tell me again why we're here, I asked, shifting uncomfortably in the passenger seat. Because people get sloppy when they're in love. Camden lifted his camera, snapping photos as Jessica emerged, Andrew close behind. Look who's having a business lunch. They walked arm in arm to a nearby restaurant, completely wrapped up in each other. Andrew hadn't even bothered to check if anyone was watching. Amateur, Camden muttered. For someone stealing thousands, he's not very careful. He never had to be, I said bitterly. Everything was always handed to him. Camden lowered his camera. Speaking from experience? Let's just say being the family disappointment has its advantages. Nobody expects much from you. We followed them to the restaurant, taking a booth within earshot. Camden pulled out a small recording device disguised as a phone. Is that legal? I whispered. In a public place? Absolutely. He adjusted the device. Now, quiet. Let's hear what the happy couple has to say. Andrew's voice drifted over. The transfer's complete. Dad doesn't suspect a thing. My hands clenched under the table. Jessica's laugh tinkled like expensive crystal. And your cousin. Gwen, Andrew scoffed. She's history. Everyone bought it hook, line and sinker, even sent her packing with a police threat. You're brilliant, baby, Jessica purred. How much longer until we have enough? 3 more months, Max. Then we'll... A waiter appeared at their table, drowning out the rest. Camden cursed softly. Back in his office, Camden played the recording while I paced. It's good, he said, but not enough. We need paper trails, bank statements. How do we get those? Leave that to me, he hesitated. There's something else you should know. I did some digging into Jessica's past. She's been involved in 3 other corporate fraud cases. What happened? Nothing. She was never charged. Always had a fall guy. He gave me a meaningful look. Sound familiar? My phone buzzed. Riley again. This time I answered. Gwen? Thank God, I've been so worried. Have you? My voice came out harder than intended. Of course I have. Look, I know you didn't do it. You're many things, but you're not a thief. I sat down heavily. Try telling that to Mom and Dad. I have. But Andrew showed them more evidence yesterday. Bank transfers, emails. What emails? I interrupted, my heart racing. Something about offshore accounts? Gwen, it looks really bad. Camden was already typing. Emails can be traced, he mouthed. Riley, I have to go, but thanks for calling. After hanging up, I turned to Camden. He's fabricating evidence now. Which means he's scared. Camden cracked his knuckles. Good. Scared people make mistakes. That evening, Sandra came over with Chinese food and found me surrounded by papers. You look terrible, she announced, dropping the takeout on my coffee table. Thanks. You really know how to boost a girl's confidence. I'm serious. She cleared space to sit. When's the last time you slept? Sleep is for people who haven't been framed by their golden boy cousin. Sandra grabbed the papers from my hands. Tell me what you found today. I told her about the lunch, the recording, Jessica's history. He's getting sloppy, Sandra. He thinks he's won. Men like that always do, she said darkly. Then her eyes caught something in the papers. Wait, what's this? She pulled out a bank statement. The same odd amount, $67,430, appeared again, but this time transferred to a different account. Camden's tracking it now, I said. The money's moving through at least 3 shell companies before disappearing offshore. Offshore where? That's what we need to find out. I grabbed my phone as it buzzed with a text from Camden. Got something. Come to the office now. Sandra drove me. Camden was waiting with a triumphant grin. Remember those emails Riley mentioned? He spun his monitor toward us. Andrew got sloppy with his digital footprint. The emails were created last week, backdated to before the theft. Amateur move. Can you prove it? Better. He pulled up another window. I found where the money's going. Your cousin and his girlfriend are building quite the nest egg in the Cayman Islands. My hands shook as I stared at the numbers. This is it. This is what we need. Almost, Camden cautioned. We need one more thing. Proof that he accessed your computer to make the original transfers. How do we get that? He smiled grimly. We set a trap. But it's risky. You'll have to go back to the office. They'll call the police if they see me. Not if you have a good reason to be there. He held up a legal document. How about a formal deposition request? I looked at Sandra, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Camden. When do we do it? Tomorrow. Better wear something bulletproof. He paused. Metaphorically speaking, of course. I grabbed my coat. Tomorrow it is. Time to show Andrew what the family disappointment can really do. Walking into Miller & Sons Financial felt like stepping into a minefield. Every head turned as I crossed the lobby, Camden beside me with his briefcase. The security guard reached for his radio, but Camden smoothly presented the legal documents. Ms. Miller is here for a formal deposition regarding ongoing financial irregularities, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Riley appeared from around the corner, coffee cup shattering on the floor when she saw me. Gwen, not now, Riley, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. My father's new secretary tried to stop us at his office. Mr. Miller is in a meeting. Perfect. Camden pushed past her. This concerns all parties involved. We burst into the office where my father sat with Andrew, both looking up in shock. Andrew's face went white. What is the meaning of this? My father demanded, standing. Camden laid out the documents. As your daughter's legal representative, I am here to formally request access to all computer logs and security footage from the dates in question. You have no right, Andrew started. Actually, we have every right, Camden interrupted. Unless you'd prefer we take this directly to the SEC. My father's face darkened. Wait outside, both of you. In the hallway, I caught Riley's eye across the office. She hurried over while Camden made a show of reviewing papers. What are you doing? She whispered. Proving my innocence. I glanced at Andrew through the glass walls. He was gesturing frantically at my father. How's Mom? A mess. She's barely eating. Riley touched my arm. Gwen, last night I heard Andrew on the phone. He sounded scared, talking about moving something offshore. Miss Miller. A security guard approached. Your father will see you now. Back in the office, my father looked 10 years older. You have 1 hour with the IT department. After that, I want you gone. We'll need access to Andrew's records as well, Camden added smoothly. Absolutely not, Andrew exploded. My father held up his hand. Enough. Give them whatever they need. I want this over with. In the IT department, Camden plugged in a device while pretending to review logs. Got it, he whispered. Remote access established. You can't be here. Andrew appeared in the doorway, his usual polish cracking. Afraid of what we'll find? I stood up, facing him. He stepped closer, voice low. You're making a mistake, Gwen. Walk away now while you still can. Like you did when they accused me? I did what I had to do. For Jessica? His face changed, fear flashing across it. I don't know what you're talking about. The offshore accounts? The shell companies? Does Dad know about those? Andrew grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Let go of her, Camden's voice cut through the tension. Now. Andrew released me, straightening his tie. 1 hour's almost up. Get out. As we left, Riley caught us by the elevator. Gwen, wait. There's something else. She glanced around nervously. I found something in Andrew's desk. Papers about a company in Delaware. Can you get them to me? She nodded. Tonight. I'll bring them to Sandra's. Back at Camden's office, his computer dinged continuously as data poured in from his remote access. Look at this, he pointed to the screen. Someone accessed your computer late at night multiple times, using Andrew's keycard to enter the building. Can you prove it was him? Better. He pulled up security footage. See that? He's not even trying to hide his face. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Back off or everyone learns about your little cocaine habit in college, I showed Camden. He's getting desperate. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. He frowned at his screen. Like this one. He just logged into the offshore account from his work computer. You can see that. Remote access works both ways. And? Got it. He sat back, grinning. Full access to all his transactions. Your cousin really should update his passwords more often than never. My phone buzzed again. Riley. On my way with the papers. You won't believe what I found. She's meeting us at Sandra's, I told Camden. Want to see what else Andrew's been hiding? He started packing up his equipment. After you. But Gwen? He paused. Be careful. Desperate people aren't just sloppy. They're dangerous. I thought about Andrew's grip on my arm, the threat in his voice. I know, but he's not the only one who can play dirty. As we left the office, I caught my reflection in the window. I barely recognized myself. Harder, sharper, more determined. Andrew wanted to play hardball? Fine. But he was about to learn that the family disappointment had nothing left to lose. And that made me more dangerous than he could imagine. Sandra's apartment buzzed with tension as Riley spread the documents across the coffee table. Her hands trembled as she pointed to a series of signatures. Look at these, she said. Andrew's been forging Dad's signature for months. These authorizations for international transfers, all fake. Camden examined the papers under his desk lamp. This is good, really good. But why would he risk forging these when he could just... He stopped, eyes widening. Oh, clever bastard. What? I leaned forward. These aren't just transfers, they're authorizations to create new accounts. Your father's signature gives him power to open accounts in the company's name without oversight. Sandra brought us coffee, peering over my shoulder. Is that why the money's so hard to trace? Exactly, Camden nodded. Each account creates a new layer of separation between Andrew and the stolen money. Classic laundering technique. My phone lit up with a text from Andrew. Last chance, Gwen. Walk away or things get ugly. Riley read it over my shoulder. He's scared. I've never seen him like this before. Good. I showed Camden another document. Look at these dates. They match perfectly with his trips to the Caymans. Business meetings, my ass, Riley muttered. He told Dad they were client visits. Camden's laptop pinged. Speaking of meetings, he turned the screen toward us. Your cousin just booked a flight to Grand Cayman for tomorrow. He's running, Sandra said. Not if I can help it. I grabbed my phone, but Camden caught my wrist. Wait. We need to be smart about this. If he runs, he'll transfer everything offshore before we can stop him. So what do we do? Camden smiled grimly. We let him think he's winning. Riley, can you get back into the office tonight? She nodded. I have late access for the quarterly reports. Perfect. I need you to plant something on his computer. Make him think his tracks are covered. While Camden explained the technical details to Riley, I stepped onto Sandra's balcony for air. The city lights blurred through unshed tears. Sandra followed me out. You okay? I don't know anymore. I gripped the railing. What if we're wrong? What if... Stop. She turned me to face her. I've known you since college. You're many things, but you're not a thief. And you're not crazy. My phone buzzed again. My mother this time. The police are asking more questions. Please, Gwendolyn, just confess. We can get you help. I threw the phone onto Sandra's couch through the open door. Camden emerged from his laptop cave. We've got movement. Andrew's accessing the accounts right now. We crowded around his screen, watching numbers shift between accounts. He's consolidating everything, Camden explained, getting ready to move it all at once. Can we stop him? Riley asked. Better. Camden's fingers flew over the keyboard. We can track every penny. And... got it. Full transaction history, account numbers, everything. Enough to prove it was him? I asked. Enough to put him away for a long time. Riley's phone chimed. Dad's calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Andrew must have told him something. Perfect timing. Camden started gathering the documents. That's exactly when we'll present our evidence. I can't go, I reminded them. They'll have me arrested. You won't need to. He held up a flash drive. Everything's here. Riley can present it. Riley straightened her shoulders. I'll do it. It's time someone stood up to him. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the family photo still lying face down. My phone lit up with another message from Andrew. You have no idea what you're about to lose. I finally replied, neither do you. Camden called minutes later. Everything's set. Riley planted the files. Andrew took the bait. He thinks he's cleared his tracks. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we end this. But Gwen? His voice turned serious. Are you sure you want to go through with it? This will destroy your family's trust in him forever. I thought about Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, every time Andrew got the benefit of the doubt while I got suspicious glances. I thought about my mother's tears, my father's disappointment, and Riley's quiet suffering. Their trust in him was built on lies, I said. Maybe it's time they saw the truth. Okay then, I heard him typing. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. I hung up and picked up the family photo, finally looking at it properly. Andrew's perfect smile, my forced one, the way everyone clustered around him like he was the sun. Tomorrow that sun would set. And in the darkness that followed, maybe, just maybe, the truth would finally have its day. I set the photo back down, this time facing up. Let him smile while he could. Tomorrow we'd see who had the last laugh. Camden's office became our war room as we watched the board meeting unfold through Riley's video call. She'd positioned her laptop perfectly, giving us a view of the entire conference room. My father sat at the head of the table, Andrew to his right, looking surprisingly composed for someone about to lose everything. He's got something planned, Camden muttered, fingers hovering over his keyboard. Look at him. Too confident. Sandra squeezed my hand as my father called the meeting to order. First item, he announced. Andrew has some concerns about our international holdings. Andrew stood, straightening his tie. Thank you, Uncle Abel. As I was reviewing our accounts, I discovered some disturbing irregularities. Irregularities like these? Riley's voice cut through the room as she started distributing folders. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice remained steady. What is this? My father demanded. Evidence, Riley said, of who really stole the money. Andrew's smile flickered. Riley, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. She connected her laptop to the projector. Camden's carefully prepared presentation appeared on the screen. These are records of every transaction Andrew made over the past year. The room erupted in whispers. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. This is ridiculous, Andrew scoffed, but his face had lost its colour. Uncle Abel, clearly Riley's been manipulated by Gwendolyn. The signatures, Andrew, Riley pressed on. Dad, look at the signatures. He's been forging your name. My father flipped through the documents, his face darkening. These are very serious accusations. Check your phone, Camden whispered to me. I looked down to see a message from Jessica. Andrew says you're bluffing. You have nothing. Now, Camden said, hitting enter on his keyboard. On the projection screen, new windows began popping up, emails between Andrew and Jessica, bank transfers, flight records to the Caymans. What is this? My father's voice had dropped dangerously low. Would you like to explain? Riley asked Andrew. Or should I? Andrew's composure cracked. These documents are clearly fabricated. Like the ones you fabricated to frame Gwen? Riley's voice shook with anger. I found the program on your computer, Andrew. The one you used to create fake emails in Gwen's name. My mother stood up suddenly. Abel, look at this. She pointed to a transaction record. These dates, they match exactly with when. When you accused me, I texted Andrew. How does it feel? I watched him check his phone, his face contorting with rage. This is absurd, he sputtered. Uncle Abel, you know me. I would never... Call Jessica, Camden whispered. I dialed her number, putting it on speaker. The room fell silent as it rang. Andrew? Jessica answered. The accounts are locked. What's happening? Andrew lunged for his phone, but Riley was faster, putting it on the conference room speaker. Jessica, don't... Andrew started. I can't access any of the offshore accounts. Jessica's panic filled the room. Did they freeze everything? Andrew, what are we going to do with the money? The silence that followed was deafening. My father stood slowly, his face ashen. Security, he said quietly into his phone. Please escort Andrew to my office and call the police. You can't do this, Andrew shouted. I built this company's international division. I made us millions. You stole millions, Riley corrected, and framed your own cousin. As security led Andrew away, my mother sank into her chair, tears streaming down her face. "Gwendolyn," she whispered, "what have we done?" Camden closed his laptop. "It's done. The authorities have been notified about the accounts." I watched through the video as my father buried his face in his hands. Riley's camera caught Andrew being led past the conference room, his perfect mask finally shattered. "How do you feel?" Sandra asked softly. I stared at the screen, at my broken family trying to process the truth. "I don't know." My phone buzzed with a message from my father. "Come home, please. We need to talk." "Are you going to go?" Camden asked. I thought about all the Sunday dinners I'd missed, all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the times I'd wondered if revenge would feel as good as I'd imagined. "Not today," I replied to my father. "I need time, just like you did." Sandra hugged me as Riley ended the video call. "It's over, Gwen. You did it." But watching my family's world crumble didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth. Painful, necessary truth. And, as Andrew's words echoed in my head, "You have no idea what you're about to lose," I realized he'd been wrong. I'd already lost everything. The only difference was now he had too. The police station hummed with fluorescent lights and hushed conversations as I sat across from Detective Morris, watching her review the evidence for the third time. "This is quite thorough," she said, looking up from Camden's files. "Your PI did excellent work." "Will it be enough?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "More than enough. Mr. Andrew Miller won't be seeing daylight for quite some time." She closed the folder. "Though I have to ask, why didn't you come to us sooner? Would you have believed me? The family disappointment over the golden boy?" A commotion outside interrupted her response. Through the glass walls, I saw my parents arriving with Riley. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, my father's shoulders slumped with the weight of betrayal. "They're here to give their statements," Detective Morris explained. "Would you like to—" "No," I stood quickly. "I should go." But as I turned to leave, my mother's voice caught me. "Gwendolyn." I froze, hand on the door handle. Her footsteps approached, hesitant. "Please," she whispered. "Just look at me." I turned. The woman who had so quickly believed the worst of me now looked small, broken. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "We should have listened. We should have—" "Mrs. Miller," Detective Morris interrupted gently. "We need your statement now." My father stepped forward. "Gwen, about the company accounts—" "Don't," I cut him off. "I don't work there anymore, remember?" Riley touched my arm as I passed. "Andrew's talking, telling them everything." "Of course he is," I said bitterly. "Anything to save himself." Outside, Camden waited in his car. "How'd it go?" "They're taking statements, building their case." I buckled my seatbelt. "Can we go?" "Actually," he checked his rearview mirror, "we have one more stop." We pulled up outside a luxury apartment building where Jessica lived. Police cars surrounded the entrance. "Why are we here?" "Because," Camden nodded toward the door, "sometimes karma needs a little push." We watched as officers led Jessica out in handcuffs, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. She spotted me and her face contorted. "You!" she screamed. "You ruined everything." "No," I called back calmly. "Andrew did that all by himself." My phone buzzed, a text from Andrew's number. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family." "You did that," I typed back, "the moment you decided to frame me." Camden drove me home, but as we pulled up to my apartment, he hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Your father called me earlier." My stomach clenched. "And?" "The board is meeting tomorrow. They're voting on new leadership." He glanced at me. "They want you to come back." I laughed harshly. They must be desperate. "They're trying to save the company's reputation. A redemption story sells better than a scandal. And if I say no, then you walk away clean. Your name's cleared. You don't owe them anything." My phone lit up with messages. Riley, my mother, my father, even old colleagues offering congratulations and apologies. "They're calling an emergency family meeting tonight," Riley's text read. "Please come. We need to make this right." Sandra appeared at my car window, knocking gently. "Thought you might need backup." "How did you—" "Riley called me." She opened my door. Come on, I'll make coffee and you can tell me why you're sitting in a car instead of celebrating. Inside her apartment, surrounded by the same takeout containers and case files that had become our war room, I finally broke down. I thought I wanted revenge, I sobbed. But this, seeing them all broken like this, that's because you're not Andrew, Sandra said firmly. You wanted justice, not destruction. My phone buzzed again. Detective Morris. Andrew's confessed to everything. We'll need you to testify. What are you going to do? Sandra asked. I stared at the family photo still lying face down on her coffee table. I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. In court, at the family meeting, everywhere. And the company? I thought about my father's office, Andrew's empty desk, the family legacy built on trust and shattered by betrayal. I don't know yet. I picked up my phone, typing a response to Riley. I'll be there tonight, but I'm bringing Sandra. And Camden? Sandra asked with a slight smile. He's done enough. I stood up, suddenly feeling lighter. It's time I faced my family on my own terms. As we prepared to leave for the family meeting, I finally turned the photo face up. The perfect family smile now seemed like a mask, one that had finally cracked to reveal the truth underneath. And maybe, just maybe, that truth would set us all free. The family estate's dining room felt smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the weight of everything that had happened. Or maybe it was just that I'd outgrown the need for its grandeur. The board voted unanimously, my father said, his voice echoing in the tense silence. They want you to take over Andrew's position. I set down my water glass carefully. And what do you want? We want you home, my mother whispered from across the table. We want to make things right. Riley squeezed my hand under the table. Sandra, sitting on my other side, gave me an encouraging nod. Making things right isn't that simple, I said. You believed the worst of me without a second thought. We were wrong, my father's voice cracked. I was wrong. I let Andrew blind me because he told me what I wanted to hear. And now you're doing the same thing. I stood up. Offering me his job because it's convenient, because it looks good for the company. No, my father pushed back his chair, because you're the only one who was strong enough to stand up for the truth, even when it cost you everything. Detective Morris's words from earlier echoed in my head. Andrew's looking at 15 years minimum. Jessica took a plea deal to testify against him. The company needs new leadership, my father continued. Someone who understands that integrity matters more than appearances. And you think that's me? The black sheep? The survivor, Riley corrected. The one who fought back. My mother reached across the table, her hand trembling. We don't deserve your forgiveness, but please give us a chance to earn it. I looked at Sandra, who nodded slightly. Tell them, she mouthed. I got another job offer, I said quietly. Camden's expanding his investigation firm. He wants me to head the financial crimes division. The silence that followed was deafening. My father cleared his throat. That's wonderful. Is that what you want? My mother asked. I want to help other people who've been framed, betrayed, written off. I met their eyes one by one. I want to make sure no one else goes through what I did. Then do both, Riley suggested suddenly. Work with Camden, but consult for the company. Help us rebuild the right way. My father's eyes lit up. She's right. We need someone who knows how to spot fraud, who understands both sides of the system. On my terms, I said firmly. Complete autonomy. And I want Riley promoted to senior management. Riley's head snapped up. What? You stood up to Andrew. You risked everything to expose the truth. The company needs more of that. My father nodded slowly. Agreed. To all of it. And Sunday dinners? My mother asked softly. I thought about all the empty chairs at Sandra's table, all the nights spent planning revenge instead of healing. We start over, I said. No pretenses. No perfect family act. Just truth. I'd like that, Riley smiled through tears. My phone buzzed. A text from Camden. How's it going? They're trying, I typed back. So am I. The police finished processing Andrew's office today, my father said. Would you help me go through it tomorrow? I saw the cost of that request in his eyes, the admission of betrayal, the need for help, the desire to make amends. Yes, I said. But first, there's something else we need to do. I pulled out the old family photo from my bag, the one that had lain face down for so long. Then I took out a new frame. Sandra took this last week, I said, showing them a photo of Riley and me outside Camden's office, laughing at something off camera. Real smiles, real moments, that's what family should be. My mother touched the photo gently. It's beautiful. It's honest, I corrected. And that's what I need from all of you. Complete honesty. They nodded, and for the first time, I believed them. Then let's begin again, my father said, raising his glass. To truth. To consequences, Riley added. To family, my mother whispered. I looked at Sandra, my constant through the storm, at Riley, who chose truth over loyalty, at my parents, trying to rebuild from the ashes of their perfect illusion. To justice, I said, raising my glass, and to whatever comes next. Outside, the sun was setting on the family estate, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn, but inside, in the warm light of truth and reconciliation, something new was beginning. Not perfect, not unbroken, but real, and that was worth fighting for.
The moment I stepped through my childhood home's front door, I knew something was wrong. The familiar scent of Mom's arroz con pollo filled the air, but the warmth I expected to feel never came. Instead, there was a hollow emptiness that made my stomach twist. My name is Tatum, and after spending a year building my career abroad, I thought coming home would feel like slipping into a favorite sweater. I was wrong. "Mama!" I called out, wheeling my suitcase across the worn hardwood floors. The sound echoed through the house, followed by the clatter of pots from the kitchen. "Tatum, me here." Mom emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. Her embrace was tight, but something felt off in the way she pulled back too quickly. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "I caught an earlier flight," I said, scanning the living room. Everything looked the same, except, "Where's Abuela's portrait?" Mom's smile faltered. "We had to make some changes while you were gone. Carmen's wedding planning took over the house." I walked to the empty wall space, my fingers tracing the faded rectangle where the portrait had hung for decades. "And Abuela's ring? I'd like to wear it now that I'm home." The silence that followed was deafening. "Mama!" I turned to face her, my heart racing. "Where's the ring?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "We needed it for Carmen's wedding. The venue she wanted was expensive, and you sold it?" The words came out as a whisper, but they might as well have been a scream. "That ring was meant for me. Abuela promised." "You've been gone too long, Tatum." Mom cut me off, her voice hardening. "Carmen needed it more. She's building a life here, while you've been off chasing dreams in Europe." The front door opened and Carmen breezed in, her perfectly manicured hands clutching wedding magazines. "Tatum, oh my God, you're early." She moved to hug me, but I stepped back. "You sold Abuela's ring?" Carmen's smile dimmed. "Oh, that." She glanced at Mom, then back to me. "It was just sitting in a box, and the wedding venue? Just sitting in a box?" My voice cracked. "That ring was the last thing Abuela gave me before she died. She made you promise, both of you, that it would be mine when I turned 30. "Which was 3 months ago," Mom interjected, "when you were too busy with your career to come home and celebrate with family. I was closing a major deal. You knew that." The memory of Abuela slipping the ring off her finger and pressing it into my palm flooded back. "Mi pequeña guerrera," she'd said. "This ring survived wars, crossed oceans. It's meant for someone strong, someone who fights for what matters. It's done, Tatum, Mom said firmly. The ring is gone, and Carmen's wedding is in 2 months. Either be happy for your sister or what? I challenged, but Mom just shook her head and returned to the kitchen. Carmen stepped closer, lowering her voice. Look, I know you're upset, but this wedding means everything to me and Lucas. The venue was perfect, and we needed the money. You understand, right? I stared at my sister, this person I'd grown up with, shared secrets with, protected from schoolyard bullies. Now she stood before me, perfectly coiffed and completely unrepentant about stealing my inheritance. Congratulations on your wedding, Carmen, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. I hope the venue was worth it. I grabbed my suitcase and headed upstairs to my old room, ignoring Carmen's calls behind me. Once inside, I locked the door and sank onto my bed, pulling out my phone to text Remy. They sold it. They actually sold Abuela's ring. Remy's response was immediate. What are you going to do? I looked at the photo on my nightstand, Abuela and me on my college graduation day, her ring glinting in the sunlight as she held my hand. The memory of her words echoed in my mind. Sometimes, mi amor, justice comes not from fighting, but from being clever enough to make others face their own choices. I'm going to make them regret it, I typed back to Remy. Every last penny they got from that ring. From downstairs, I could hear Carmen's excited chatter about table arrangements and flower choices. Mom's laughter floated up through the floorboards, and my jaw clenched. They thought they could dismiss me, dismiss Abuela's wishes, because I'd been gone too long. Well, I was home now, and they were about to learn that the little girl they remembered had grown into exactly the kind of woman Abuela had seen in me. Someone who fights for what matters, no matter the cost. I spent the next morning at the local coffee shop, laptop open, diving deep into my family's financial records. Being a financial analyst had its perks, namely, knowing exactly where to look for information that most people wouldn't think to hide. More coffee? The barista asked, hovering near my table. Please, I nodded, not looking up from my screen. Something wasn't adding up. Carmen's wedding venue cost was astronomical, but the money from Abuela's ring wouldn't have covered even half of it. There had to be more to the story. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Dress fitting at 2. You're coming, right? I typed back a quick, of course, while opening another browser tab. That's when I saw it, a mortgage approval from 3 weeks ago. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up property records. Holy shit, I whispered. They hadn't just sold Abuela's ring for the venue. They'd used it as part of a down payment on a house, Carmen and Lucas's dream home. My phone buzzed again. Remy this time. Found anything? Meet me for lunch? Need your legal expertise. An hour later, Remy slid into the booth across from me at our favorite diner. Spill, she said, ordering a coffee without looking at the menu. I pushed my laptop toward her. They bought a house, used Abuela's ring money as part of the down payment. Remy's eyes widened as she scrolled through the documents. This is a gorgeous property, but wait. She squinted at the screen. There's something odd about this mortgage structure. Exactly, I said, leaning forward. They barely qualified. One missed payment, and the whole thing could collapse. Tatum, Remy warned. Whatever you're thinking. I know the real estate agent, I cut in. Remember Jake from high school? He handled the sale. Remy sat back, crossing her arms. And he owes me a favor. Remember that time I helped his sister with her visa application? Tatum. The waitress arrived with our food, interrupting whatever protest Remy was about to make. I waited until she left before continuing. I'm not doing anything illegal, I assured her, just making some inquiries as a potential buyer. Of what? Any properties Jake has listed, including ones that might come available soon? Remy took a bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. You're going to try to buy their house if they default, aren't you? I shrugged, picking at my fries. I'm just keeping my options open. You need to be careful, Remy said, lowering her voice. This isn't just about the ring anymore. You're right, I agreed, checking the time. It's about respect, family, keeping promises. I stood up, grabbing my purse. Speaking of which, I have a dress fitting to attend. The bridal shop was exactly as pretentious as I expected. Carmen stood on a pedestal surrounded by mirrors, while Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. You look beautiful, mi amor, Mom gushed. I forced a smile watching Carmen twirl in her designer gown. The dress is perfect, I said, and it was. Simple, elegant, everything Carmen wasn't. I knew you'd love it, Carmen beamed. And wait until you see the house, Tatum. It's absolutely perfect. Lucas and I close next week. Can't wait, I replied, my phone buzzing in my pocket. A text from Jake. Free for coffee tomorrow? Need to catch up. Oh, Carmen clapped her hands. You should come to dinner tonight. Lucas's parents are coming over, and Dad's making his famous paella. Wouldn't miss it, I said, typing back to Jake. Tomorrow at 10, the usual place. That evening, I watched my family gather around the dinner table, laughing and planning Carmen's perfect day. Lucas's parents were lovely people, completely unaware of the undercurrents of tension. To Carmen and Lucas, Dad raised his glass. And their new beginning. Everyone clinked glasses. I took a sip of wine, studying Carmen's perfectly manicured hands, wondering if she ever thought about the ring that should have been on mine. Tatum's been so quiet, Carmen said suddenly. Tell us about Europe. Did you meet anyone special? I smiled, setting down my glass. Actually, I did meet someone interesting recently. I paused, watching their eager faces. A real estate agent. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. You're looking to buy? Just keeping my options open, I said, echoing my words to Remy. You never know when the perfect opportunity might come along. The conversation moved on, but I caught Mom watching me with narrowed eyes. She'd always said I had Abuela's smile, the one that didn't quite reach the eyes when we were planning something. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Jake. And then, well, as Abuela used to say, patience is the companion of wisdom. I had plenty of both. Jake hadn't changed much since high school, still had that easy smile and nervous habit of tapping his fingers on the table. We sat in a quiet corner of the coffee shop, away from the morning rush. So, he said, sliding a folder across the table, I pulled the records you asked about. I opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. Tell me what I'm looking at. Your sister and Lucas barely qualified for the mortgage. Jake lowered his voice. They're stretching themselves thin. The down payment barely made the minimum requirement, even with the money from the ring sale. How much was the ring worth? The question had been burning in my mind. Jake hesitated. Market value? Around $15,000. But they sold it to a private collector who paid $25,000. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. $25,000. That's what they thought Abuela's legacy was worth. Here's the interesting part, Jake continued, pointing to a clause in the contract. The seller included a right of first refusal clause. If they default within the first year, the property goes back on the market with strict conditions. What kind of conditions? The kind that would make it difficult for most buyers to qualify. Jake gave me a meaningful look. Unless they happen to have liquid assets and an excellent credit score. My phone buzzed. Remy. How's the meeting going? Don't do anything stupid. Jake. I leaned forward. What exactly do you owe my sister and Lucas? Nothing. He shrugged. They're just clients. But you, he smiled. You helped my sister stay in the country. I haven't forgotten that. I nodded slowly. So if another buyer came along, one with better qualifications, Jake raised an eyebrow. I'd have to present any legitimate offers to the seller. It's my legal obligation. I gathered the documents, sliding them into my bag. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate the information. Tatum, he called as I stood up. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Real estate can get messy. Don't worry, I smiled. I learned from the best. Our high school debate team captain, remember? An hour later, I sat in Remy's law office, spreading the documents across her desk. This is insane, she said, reading through the mortgage terms. They're one missed payment away from disaster. Exactly. I pulled out my laptop. And look at this, Carmen's wedding budget spreadsheet. She accidentally shared it with my old email. Remy whistled at the numbers. These are some expensive taste. How are they affording all this? They're not, I said grimly. They're counting on wedding gifts to cover the gaps. But with the house payment, property taxes, and the wedding debt, it's a house of cards, Remy finished. But Tatum, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, I have the money, I cut in. That deal I closed in Europe, the bonus was substantial. This isn't about money, Remy pushed back from her desk. This is about family. Are you ready for what this will do to them? To you? My phone lit up with a text from Carmen. Cake tasting tomorrow. Don't be late like you were for the dress fitting. They weren't ready for what selling Abuela's ring would do to me, I replied, showing Remy the text. Besides, I'm not doing anything wrong, just being strategic. Remy sighed, pulling out a legal pad. Okay, if we're doing this, we're doing it right. First, you'll need a shell company to make the purchase. Keep your name off everything until the last possible moment. We spent the next hour planning, Remy's legal expertise helping me navigate the complexities of real estate law. By the time I left her office, the framework of my plan was solid. At the cake tasting the next day, I watched Carmen and Lucas sample flavors, their faces glowing with excitement. Try this one. Carmen pushed a plate toward me. It's champagne with raspberry filling. I took a bite, thinking about the documents in my bag. It's perfect, I said, just like everything else in your wedding. I know, Carmen beamed. And wait until you see what we're doing with the house. Lucas's parents are helping us furnish it as a wedding gift. That's so generous, I smiled, remembering the clause in their mortgage about furnishing loans. When do you move in? Right after the honeymoon, Carmen said dreamily. It's like a fairy tale, isn't it? Everything falling into place perfectly. I thought about Abuela's ring, probably sitting in some collector's vault, about the portrait that had disappeared from our wall, about promises broken and memories sold. Yes, I said, taking another bite of cake, just like a fairy tale. But fairy tales, as Abuela used to remind me, weren't always sweet. Sometimes they were warnings wrapped in sugar coating, teaching lessons about greed, betrayal, and consequences. And I was about to teach my family a lesson they'd never forget. The real estate office buzzed with activity as I signed the final paperwork for my shell company. Jake sat across from me, sliding document after document across his desk. Remember, he said quietly, timing is everything. One wrong move and this all falls apart. I know. I initialed another page. Has Carmen made her payment this month? Jake checked his computer. Barely, they had to pull from their wedding fund. He lowered his voice further. The caterer called me yesterday, asking if I knew why their last check bounced. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. Family dinner tonight. No excuses. Perfect timing, I muttered, signing the last document. How long until everything's in place? 2 weeks, Max. Jake gathered the papers. Just in time for the wedding. That evening, I walked into my parents' house to find Carmen in tears at the kitchen table. What happened? I asked, though I already knew. The florist, Carmen sobbed. They're demanding full payment up front now. Something about their policy changing. Mom shot me a suspicious look as she patted Carmen's back. It's okay, mi amor. We'll figure something out. I could help, I offered innocently. I have some savings. No, Dad interrupted, entering the kitchen. We don't need your money, Tatum. We'll handle this as a family. Like you handled Abuela's ring? The words slipped out before I could stop them. The kitchen fell silent. Carmen's sobs quieted to hiccups. That's enough, Mom snapped. We're not discussing this again. Fine. I sat down watching Dad serve the enchiladas. How's the house, Carmen? Everything ready for the move? Carmen brightened slightly. Almost. The painters finish next week and then… If we can afford it, Lucas cut in, joining us at the table. He looked tired, worry lines creasing his forehead. The rates on our credit cards just went up. I took a bite of enchilada, hiding my smile. Amazing what a few calls to credit card companies about suspicious activity could do. You two are just having pre-wedding jitters, Mom insisted. Everything will work out. My phone buzzed. Remy. Papers are filed. You're officially a ghost buyer. Speaking of work, I said, putting my phone away, I might be buying some property in the area. Any advice, Lucas? You're in real estate development, right? Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Actually, I'm between projects right now. The market's complicated. That's not what I heard, I pressed. Jake mentioned some interesting opportunities coming up. Carmen's fork clattered against her plate. You've been talking to Jake? Just catching up, I shrugged. We were friends in high school, remember? The tension around the table was delicious. Mom's eyes narrowed. Dad studied his plate, and Carmen exchanged worried glances with Lucas. More enchiladas? Dad offered weakly. Later that night, Remy called as I was driving home. The florist called, she said. They're willing to be flexible on the payment schedule. How flexible? They'll take half now, half after the wedding. But Tatum? Remy paused. I saw the guest list. Over 200 people? The numbers don't add up. They never did, I replied, pulling into my driveway. That's the point. The next morning, I met Jake at Carmen and Lucas's future house. The painters were taking a break, leaving us alone in the empty living room. The seller's interested in your offer, Jake said, his voice echoing off the bare walls. If anything happens with the current buyers… I walked to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured lawn. And the timing? Their next payment is due 3 days before the wedding. Jake checked his phone. If they miss it, everything's ready to go. I turned, taking in the space where Carmen had planned to put her wedding photos, the corner where she'd picked out a Christmas tree spot. Having second thoughts? Jake asked. No. I pulled out my phone, showing him a photo of Abuela's ring. They made their choice. Now they'll live with it. That afternoon, Carmen called me in a panic. The wedding planner quit, she cried. Something about professional integrity and bounced checks. Tatum, what am I going to do? Breathe, I said calmly. I'll help you find another one. Really? But you've been so distant lately. You're my sister, I replied, thinking of the documents sitting in my safe. Family helps family, right? As I hung up, another text from Remy appeared. Last chance to back out. I looked at the photo of Abuela on my desk, her ring glinting in the sunlight. Sometimes, she used to say, the most important lessons cost everything. No backing out, I texted back. The house of cards is about to fall. 1 week before the wedding, I stood in Carmen and Lucas's future kitchen, watching them argue in hushed tones by the granite countertop they couldn't afford. We can't keep pulling from the wedding fund, Lucas hissed. The mortgage payment is due in 4 days. My parents will help, Carmen insisted, but her voice wavered. They always do. They can't, I interrupted, making them both jump. Dad's credit cards are maxed out. I saw the statements on his desk yesterday. Carmen's face crumpled. Why are you here, Tatum? To gloat? I'm here to help with the wedding plans, like you asked. I set my laptop on the counter. Unless you don't want my help anymore? Lucas ran his hands through his hair. I need to make some calls. He walked out, phone already pressed to his ear. Carmen slumped against the counter. Everything's falling apart, she whispered. The caterer's threatening to cancel. The venue wants the final payment tomorrow, and now the house. You could postpone the wedding, I suggested, watching her carefully. No, Carmen straightened up. Everything has to be perfect. We've invited everyone, booked everything. I can't be the failure of the family. Like me? The words hung in the air between us. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. That's not what I meant. You're successful, you're gone too long? I quoted Mom's words back at her. Too focused on my career? Tatum, about the ring. My phone buzzed. Jake, payment deadline tomorrow. They haven't made any arrangements. I have to go. I cut Carmen off, gathering my things. Wedding emergency to handle. As I reached the door, Carmen called out, Wait, I never thanked you for helping with everything these past weeks. I turned back, seeing my little sister, really seeing her, for the first time since I'd returned. She looked small, scared, nothing like the confident bride who dismissed my feelings about Abuela's ring. That's what family does, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. At home, I found Remy waiting on my doorstep. We need to talk, she said, following me inside. I just got off the phone with the venue. They're giving Carmen and Lucas until tomorrow noon to pay, or they're canceling. I know. I poured us both a glass of wine. The mortgage payment is due the same day. Tatum. Remy set her glass down untouched. I saw them today at the park near my office. They looked happy, in love, despite everything. Love doesn't pay bills, I said sharply, or replace family heirlooms. No, but a knock at the door interrupted us. I opened it to find Lucas standing there, looking desperate. I need your help, he said without preamble. I know we're not close, but Carmen loves you, and I love her. Come in. I stepped aside, watching him pace my living room. I messed up, he admitted. The development project I was working on fell through months ago. I've been pretending everything's fine, taking consulting jobs to make ends meet. But now reality's catching up, I finished. Please, he looked at me, eyes red. I'll pay you back every cent. I just need help with the mortgage payment. Just this once. Remy shot me a warning look. Tatum. I walked to my desk, pulled out the folder of documents I'd been collecting. How much do you know about your mortgage terms, Lucas? What? The right of first refusal clause, the accelerated default provisions? I spread the papers on my coffee table. Did you read any of it? His face paled. How did you get these? The same way I got these. I added the credit card statements, the bounced check notices, the catering contract with its missed payments. You've been watching us, he whispered, planning something. Like you planned to sell my grandmother's ring? I kept my voice steady. Like you planned this perfect life you can't afford? Lucas staggered back. Carmen was right. You've changed. No, I corrected him. I just stopped letting people take what's mine. He left without another word, the door closing softly behind him. That was cruel, Remy said into the silence. That was honest. I gathered the documents back into their folder. Something my family hasn't been in a long time. My phone lit up with a text from Carmen. Whatever you're planning, please don't. Not before the wedding. I'm begging you. I showed the message to Remy, who shook her head. It's not too late to stop this. But as I looked at the empty space on my finger where Abuela's ring should have been, I knew it had been too late the moment they sold it. The payment deadline is tomorrow, I said, finishing my wine. Let's see if love really conquers all. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather and imperfect timing. I stood in front of the church mirror, adjusting my bridesmaid's dress while my phone buzzed with notifications. Jake, payment missed, default proceedings initiated. Remy, venue payment cleared last minute, weddings on. Jake, offer accepted by seller, papers ready. You look beautiful, Mom said, appearing behind me in the mirror. Almost as beautiful as Carmen. Almost, I echoed, watching her face. Did you help them with the venue payment? Mom's smile tightened. We sold some things. More family heirlooms? Enough, Tatum. She gripped my shoulders. Today is your sister's day. Don't ruin it. The church filled quickly with guests in designer outfits, all here to witness Carmen's perfect day. I stood at my assigned spot, clutching my bouquet, watching Lucas fidget at the altar. The wedding march began, and Carmen appeared on Dad's arm. She was radiant in her white dress, smiling through her veil. For a moment, I almost wavered. Then I saw it, on her finger, a new ring, diamond-encrusted, obviously expensive. My stomach churned. Dearly beloved, the priest began, but my phone vibrated silently in my hidden dress pocket. Jake again. Everything's done. You own the house. The ceremony passed in a blur of vows and promises. Promises, I thought bitterly, like the one they made to Abuela about her ring. At the reception, Carmen danced with Lucas, their faces glowing with joy. I sat at my assigned table, watching the champagne flow, knowing each bottle represented money they didn't have. You okay? Remy asked, sliding into the seat beside me. Perfect. I pulled an envelope from my clutch. The timing couldn't be better. Tatum, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ's voice boomed. It's time for the maid of honor's speech. I stood, envelope in hand, and made my way to the microphone. The room fell silent. My sister Carmen, I began, has always known exactly what she wanted. The perfect wedding, the perfect house, the perfect life. I paused, meeting her eyes across the room, and she's always known how to get it. Carmen's smile faltered slightly. When we were kids, I continued, Carmen wanted my favorite doll. She cried until our parents made me give it to her. When we were teenagers, she wanted my prom date. She got him too. Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the crowd. But this year, she wanted something that wasn't hers to take. I pulled out my phone, showing the picture of Abuela's ring. This ring survived wars, crossed oceans, and was promised to me. But Carmen wanted a perfect wedding more than she wanted to keep that promise. Tatum, Mom warned from her table, but I kept going. So today, on this perfect day, I wanted to give my sister and her new husband a gift. I held up the envelope. Something to match their perfect taste. Lucas stood, his face pale. Tatum, don't. It's the deed to your dream house, I announced, watching their faces. Or rather, my dream house now. The payment you missed yesterday, the one you needed for your perfect wedding. It triggered the default clause, and I was there, ready to buy. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Carmen's perfect makeup began to run with tears. You can't, she whispered into the microphone I still held. That's our home. Was your home? I corrected, just like this was my ring. I set the envelope on their table. Consider it karma or consider it justice. Either way, you have 30 days to vacate. Congratulations on your perfect wedding. I turned to leave, but Carmen grabbed my arm. How could you? She sobbed. We're family. Family? I pulled away. Family keeps promises. Family respects memories. Family doesn't sell what isn't theirs to sell. Enough! Dad's voice boomed across the room. Both of you, outside, now. In the garden behind the venue, surrounded by the roses Carmen had insisted on, our family drama reached its breaking point. "Fix this," Mom demanded. "Give them back the house." "Like you gave back my ring?" I challenged. Carmen sank onto a bench, her white dress pooling around her. "We needed the money," she whispered. "We were desperate." "And now you're homeless," I replied. "Funny how karma works." "Por favor," Dad pleaded. "We can work this out." I looked at my family, Mom's angry tears, Dad's disappointment, Carmen's ruined makeup, Lucas's defeated stance, and felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. "The house is mine," I said firmly, "just like the ring was supposed to be mine. You all made your choices. Now live with them." I walked away, leaving them in the garden, the sound of Carmen's sobs following me into the night. In my purse, the house keys jingled with every step, a melody of revenge finally served. The morning after the wedding, I sat in my new kitchen, their kitchen, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the echo of what I'd done. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since last night. "Mom, how could you do this to your sister?" "Dad, we need to talk." "Remy, call me when you're ready." "Carmen, please, we can fix this." A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Lucas standing there, still in his wedding suit, looking like he hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" His voice was hoarse. I stepped aside, watching him take in the boxes I'd already moved in. "Efficient?" he commented dryly. "I learned from the best," I replied. "How's Carmen?" "Destroyed." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "She's at your parents' house, crying about how she's lost everything. Her sister, her home, her perfect life." "And the ring?" Lucas met my eyes. "That's why I'm here. I found something you should see." He pulled out his phone, showing me an email. "The collector who bought your grandmother's ring, he's willing to sell it back." My heart skipped. "What's the catch?" "Double the price," Lucas said. $50,000. I laughed bitterly. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I know where the ring really is." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Carmen never sold it. She pawned it." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "She was going to get it back," Lucas continued. "After the wedding, when things settled down. The collector's story was to make it seem final, so you wouldn't look for it." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a pawn ticket, dated 3 months ago. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I love Carmen," Lucas said simply. "But what she did was wrong, and now we're both paying for it." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Carmen, mascara streaked down her face, still in her wedding dress. "You weren't supposed to tell her," she screamed at Lucas, pushing past me into the house. "That was our only leverage." "Leverage?" I grabbed her arm. "You were going to blackmail me with my own grandmother's ring?" "I was desperate," Carmen wrenched away. "The house, the wedding, everything was falling apart. I needed you to give it back." "Give it back?" I advanced on her. "Like you gave back my ring? Oh, wait, you didn't sell it. You pawned it, like some cheap piece of costume jewelry." "Girls!" Mom's voice cut through our argument. She stood in the doorway, Dad behind her. "Enough!" "No," I said firmly. "Not enough. Carmen, where's the pawn ticket?" "I'm not giving it to you." She clutched her purse tighter. "Not unless you sign the house back over." "Carmen," Lucas warned, but she ignored him. "You want your precious ring," she continued. "Then give us back our home." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The desperate gleam in her eyes, the way her perfect wedding dress was now wrinkled and stained, the new ring on her finger that probably cost as much as the down payment they couldn't afford. "You haven't changed since we were kids," I said quietly. "Still thinking you can cry your way into getting whatever you want." And you're still the same bitter, jealous sister, Carmen spat, always thinking everyone owes you something. Stop it, both of you. Dad stepped between us. This isn't what your grandmother would have wanted. No. I turned to him. Abuela taught me to fight for what matters, to stand up for myself. Where were you when Carmen took what was mine? When Mom pawned my inheritance? We were trying to help your sister, Mom pleaded. By hurting me? I pulled out my phone, dialing Jake's number. Hello? Yes, I need you to start the eviction proceedings immediately. Tatum, no! Carmen lunged for my phone, but Lucas held her back. 30 days, I said into the phone, watching my sister collapse into Lucas's arms. Not a day more. You'll regret this, Mom said, her voice cold. Family is forever, Tatum. Family? I gestured around the empty house. Family died the day you chose her perfect wedding over Abuela's wishes. They left one by one. First Mom and Dad, then Lucas, practically carrying a hysterical Carmen. The pawn ticket was still in her purse, along with whatever leverage she thought she had over me. My phone buzzed one more time. Remy. Was it worth it? I looked around at my new house, bought with betrayal and paid for with pain. The walls seemed to echo with Carmen's sobs, with Mom's disappointment, with Dad's silence. No going back now, I texted Remy. But as I stood in my victory, I felt nothing but hollow. The pawn shop bell jingled as I pushed open the door. Behind the counter, an elderly man looked up from his newspaper. Can I help you? I placed the pawn ticket on the counter. Carmen had finally surrendered it last night, slipping it under my door with a note. I hope it was worth it. The man examined the ticket, then disappeared into the back. My heart pounded as I waited, remembering Abuela's words the day she gave me the ring. Power isn't in the gold, mi amor. It's in what we choose to do with it. He returned with a familiar velvet box. Inside, Abuela's ring caught the fluorescent light, its worn gold and tiny diamonds exactly as I remembered. That'll be $3,000 plus interest, he said. I handed over my credit card, my hands shaking slightly. As I slipped the ring onto my finger, my phone buzzed. Remy. Did you get it? Me. Yes, meeting you in 20. I found Remy at the courthouse, clutching a manila envelope. Are you sure about this? She asked, handing me the papers. No, I admitted, but Abuela would be. We drove to my parents' house in silence. Carmen's car was in the driveway, along with a moving truck. They were packing up her things, preparing for the eviction. Mom opened the door, her face hardening when she saw me. Come to gloat? No. I held up the envelope. I came to fix things. In the living room, Carmen sat surrounded by wedding gifts they'd have to return. Lucas stood by the window, while Dad occupied his usual armchair. What's this? Carmen asked as I placed the envelope on the coffee table. Open it. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the documents. Her eyes widened as she read. A lease agreement? 1 year, I explained. Market rate rent. After that, if you make every payment on time, you'll have the option to buy back the house. Why? Lucas stepped forward. After everything, I held up my hand, Abuela's ring glinting. Because this ring isn't about power or punishment. It's about family. Carmen stared at the ring. How did you... The pawn ticket you gave me. I sat beside her. Carmen, what we did to each other. It has to stop. But the house is yours now, she whispered. You won. Nobody won. I took her hand. Look at us. Look at what we've become. Mom moved closer, her eyes on the ring. Your abuela would be so disappointed in all of us. No, I corrected her. She'd be waiting for us to make it right. Dad cleared his throat. The lease payments? They're reasonable? More than reasonable, Lucas confirmed, reviewing the papers. This is generous, Tatum. With conditions, I added. First, no more secrets, no more manipulation. And Carmen, I turned to my sister. You need help with the spending, real help. Carmen nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know. I've already called a financial advisor. And the wedding gifts? I asked. Being returned, Lucas said firmly. All of them. We're starting fresh. Mom touched the ring on my finger. It looks right, she said softly. It belongs there. Yes, I agreed. And this house belongs to all of us. The memories we'll make here, the family we'll rebuild. That's worth more than revenge. Carmen hugged me suddenly, her tears soaking my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she whispered, for everything. Me too, I whispered back. Dad stood, his eyes misty. Your abuela used to say that family is like a garden. Sometimes you have to prune hard to grow stronger. But you don't pull out the roots, I finished, remembering abuela's words. Later that evening, as Carmen and Lucas signed the lease agreement, Mom brought out an old photo album. Look, she said, opening to a page with abuela's picture. She's wearing the ring here at your 5th birthday party, Tatum. In the photo, abuela sat between Carmen and me, one arm around each of us, the ring catching the light just like it did now. She knew, didn't she? Carmen asked quietly, that we'd need something to bring us back together someday. She knew we'd find our way back, I replied, touching the ring. If we were brave enough to choose family over pride. As I drove home that night, I passed the house, their house now, at least for the next year. The moving truck was gone, and lights glowed warmly in the windows. My phone buzzed one last time. Carmen, thank you for giving us a second chance. We won't waste it. I smiled, abuela's ring comfortable on my finger where it belonged. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in winning the fight, but in knowing when to end it. And sometimes, just sometimes, karma works in mysterious ways, not to punish, but to heal.
The call came during my morning coffee ritual at Riverside Cafe, the same ritual Aunt Margaret had mocked countless times as wasting money better spent on a real career. My hands trembled as I listened to my cousin Camila's voice crack through the speaker. Mia, it's bad. The doctors say she needs specialized treatment and insurance won't cover most of it. I'm Mia, a graphic artist in a small town where creativity is often mistaken for laziness, especially by my Aunt Margaret. The irony of this call wasn't lost on me. Just last week, at my cousin's engagement party, Aunt Margaret had made sure everyone heard her opinions about my life choices. Look at her, sitting there with her little drawings, she'd announced to the room, wine glass swaying dangerously in her hand. June, I don't understand how you let her waste her potential like this. A proper job, that's what she needs. My mother had simply looked away, her silence more cutting than any words could be. Mia, are you still there? Camila's voice pulled me back to the present. Yeah, sorry. How much does she need? The number Camilla quoted made my coffee go cold in my throat. That was more than I made in 6 months. We're having a family meeting tonight, Camilla continued. Maybe if we all pitch in. I'll be there, I said, already knowing how it would go. The meeting was exactly as I'd expected. Chaos wrapped in forced politeness at my mother's house. Aunt Margaret sat in her usual armchair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, but her tongue hadn't lost its edge. Well, if some people had chosen more reliable professions, she said, eyeing me pointedly, we might have more resources as a family. My friend Rose, who'd come for moral support, squeezed my hand under the table. She knew how much those barbs hurt, even after all these years. Margaret, my mother finally spoke up, this isn't helping. No, what's not helping is having a niece who thinks doodling is a career. Margaret's voice rose. Did you know she turned down that accounting position I arranged? And now look, I'm updating my will, and guess who won't be in it? The room fell silent. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. Outside, Rose followed me to the porch swing. You okay? You know what's funny? I said, watching my breath cloud in the cold air. My latest commission just sold for $5,000. But in there, I'm still just the family disappointment. Mia, Rose started, but my phone buzzed. A text from Micah, my artist friend. Got that gallery showing you wanted. Call me. I should have felt excited, but all I could think about was Aunt Margaret's pale face and the stack of medical bills on the coffee table inside. She's really sick, isn't she? I asked Rose. Stage 3. They caught it late because she was too proud to get checked earlier. Pride. That was Aunt Margaret's everything. The same pride that made her refuse to acknowledge my art in the local paper, or the mural I painted for the children's hospital. The door opened, and Camila stepped out, her eyes red. The lawyer's here with the will papers. She wants to make it official tonight. Of course she does, I muttered. Back inside, Margaret's lawyer, Serena, was laying out documents. My aunt's hand shook as she signed, but her voice was steady as she announced, I want it clear that my estate will be divided between Camila and June. Mia has chosen her path, and it's not one I will support. I watched her sign away my existence on paper, and something shifted inside me. Not pain, I was used to that, but something else. A plan started forming, one that would either break me financially or prove something I'd been trying to show my aunt for years. As everyone filed out later, I overheard Margaret talking to my mother. The treatments start next week. I don't know how we'll manage, but I won't accept charity. I have my dignity. I smiled to myself, pulling out my phone to check my bank balance. Dignity was about to meet its match in karma, and I was going to be the one dealing the cards. Everything okay? Rose asked, catching my expression. Yeah, I said, watching Aunt Margaret being helped to her car. I just need to make some calls tomorrow. About that inheritance she's so proud of. I think it's time to show her what her useless niece can really do. I didn't know then that my decision that night would set off a chain of events that would either heal our family or shatter it completely. But standing there, watching Margaret's car disappear into the darkness, I knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served with an anonymous check and a side of karmic justice. The next morning, I sat in my tiny home office, staring at my laptop screen. My savings account balance glared back at me, the result of 3 years of careful planning for my own design studio. My phone buzzed with a text from Rose. Have you thought this through? It's a lot of money. I called her instead of texting back. I've run the numbers. If I take on extra freelance work and dip into my studio fund, I can make it work. Mia, that's your dream we're talking about. And for what? Someone who's never believed in you? Before I could answer, another call came in. Camila. Hold on, Rose. Mia? Camila's voice was thick with tears. The hospital called. They need the first payment by Friday, or they'll have to postpone her treatment. My stomach clenched. How much? 20,000. Mom's trying to get a loan, but with her credit... She trailed off. I'll call you back, I said, switching back to Rose. Still there? You're going to do it, aren't you? I pulled up my banking app. You should have seen her face last night, Rose. All that pride, and now she can't even afford to save her own life. And you think secretly paying for her treatment will what? Make her finally appreciate you? No, I said, starting the transfer process. But maybe it'll teach her something about judging people's worth. After hanging up, I walked to my local coffee shop where Micah was waiting. His eyes widened as I approached. You look like you haven't slept. Thanks for the compliment, I said, sliding into the booth. Tell me about the gallery showing. 3 months from now. Prime spot, great exposure, but... He studied my face. Something's wrong. I stirred my coffee absently. I might have to pass. Pass? Mia, this is your big break. The kind of opportunity that... I know. Several heads turned our way and I lowered my voice. I know, but something came up. Does this have something to do with your aunt? Camila told me about the will. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a notification. The transfer had gone through. $20,000, sent anonymously through my lawyer to the hospital's billing department. Mia? Micah waved his hand in front of my face. You're scaring me. I'm fine. Just taking care of something important. That evening, I was working on a commission when Camila called again. It's crazy, she said. Someone paid for Aunt Margaret's first round of treatment. Anonymous donation. I forced my voice to stay neutral. Really? That's unexpected? She's furious. Keeps saying she doesn't want charity. Mom's trying to convince her to accept it, but you know how she is. I did know. I also knew exactly what would happen next. Sure enough, the family meeting that night was explosive. I arrived to find Aunt Margaret holding court in her usual spot, face flushed with anger. "It's humiliating," she declared. "Some stranger thinking they can just—" "Margaret," my mother interrupted. "This is a blessing. Why can't you just accept it?" "Because I have my pride, unlike some people who probably live off handouts." Her eyes found me. "Speaking of which, Mia, how's the art business?" I met her gaze steadily. "Just finished a corporate project, but you probably wouldn't be interested." "See?" She turned to my mother. "That attitude. That's why she's not in the will. No respect for real work." Rose, who'd arrived late, caught my eye from across the room. She could probably see the irony written all over my face. Later, as I helped clean up, Camilla cornered me in the kitchen. "There's something different about you tonight. Usually, Aunt Margaret's comments get to you more." I shrugged, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "Maybe I'm growing up. Or maybe you know something about that mysterious donation." I dropped a fork, the clatter loud in the sudden silence. "What makes you say that?" "Just, you seem calm. Too calm." Before she could press further, Rose appeared in the doorway. "Mia, your phone's been buzzing. It's Micah about the gallery." I escaped to the porch, grateful for the rescue. But as I listened to Micah detail the opportunity I was about to give up, I heard Aunt Margaret's voice drift through the open window. "I've hired someone," she was saying. "A private investigator. I want to know who's behind this charity. No one makes a fool of Margaret Ross." I ended the call with Micah and leaned against the porch railing, watching the stars. My bank account was significantly lighter, my dream studio was slipping away, and now my aunt was actively hunting for my identity. But somehow, watching her rage against anonymous kindness felt like its own kind of victory. Rose joined me outside. "You know this is going to get complicated, right?" I nodded, thinking of the next payment I'd need to make in 2 weeks. Sometimes the most expensive revenge is the one that looks like kindness. 2 weeks into my secret mission, I found myself pulling double shifts at my desk, coffee cups multiplying around my workspace like mushrooms. A new corporate client had demanded 3 complete revisions of their logo, each paying less than the last. But I needed every penny. My phone lit up with a message from Micah. "Coffee? You've been MIA for days." I met him at our usual spot, trying not to wince at the $5 I spent on a latte, money that should have gone to Aunt Margaret's next treatment payment. "You look terrible," he said, sliding into the seat across from me, charming as always. "I'm serious. You're working yourself to death, and you still haven't given me a straight answer about the gallery showing." I stared into my coffee. "I can't commit right now, the entry fee alone." "Since when do you worry about money? Your business was doing great." Before I could answer, Camila walked in. She spotted us and made her way over, uninvited. "Guess what?" she said, pulling up a chair. "The anonymous donor struck again. Another payment cleared yesterday." My hands tightened around my cup. "How's Aunt Margaret taking it?" "Oh, she's livid. That investigator she hired? He's been asking questions all over town. But get this, the money's being routed through some complicated trust fund setup. He can't trace it." I tried to hide my smile. My lawyer had earned her fee with that arrangement. "Speaking of money," Camila continued, "Mom says you turned down 3 family dinner invitations this week. Are you avoiding us?" "Just busy with work," I said, pulling out my phone as another client email arrived. "Speaking of which..." "Always running away," she muttered. "Just like Aunt Margaret says." I froze halfway out of my seat. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just... She might have a point about responsibility. While someone's helping us with the medical bills, the rest of us are still trying to support her. Where are you in all this? Micah jumped in before I could respond. "Hey, Mia's working harder than anyone I know." "Right, on her little drawings." I left without answering, my coffee barely touched. Outside, Micah caught up with me. "Don't let them get to you," he said. "They don't understand what you do." "It's fine. I need to get back to work anyway." That evening, I was knee-deep in design work when Rose called. "Emergency family meeting at your mom's. Aunt Margaret's investigator found something." My heart stopped. "What kind of something?" "Don't know, but she sounds excited. You coming?" I arrived to find everyone already gathered. Aunt Margaret sat in her usual chair, looking smug despite her illness-worn features. A man in a crisp suit stood beside her, the investigator, I assumed. "Ah, Mia," Aunt Margaret said. "So nice of you to grace us with your presence. Mr. Ortiz here has some interesting information about our mysterious benefactor." The investigator cleared his throat. "The funds are coming from a local source, someone with considerable savings, recently depleted. We've narrowed it down to—" My phone rang, cutting him off. The client with the logo revisions. I stepped into the kitchen to take the call. "What do you mean you're going with another designer?" I fought to keep my voice down. "We had a contract." When I returned to the living room, everyone was staring at me. "Problem?" Aunt Margaret asked sweetly. "Just work stuff. What did I miss?" Mr. Ortiz was explaining how our donor seems to be struggling financially themselves, taking on extra work, making suspicious transfers. Her eyes narrowed. "Rather like someone else we know." I met her gaze steadily. "Sounds like they're working hard, unlike some people who just judge others' careers." The room went silent. Even the investigator looked uncomfortable. "How dare you?" Aunt Margaret started to rise, but weakness forced her back down. After everything what? After years of belittling me? After cutting me out of your will? Yeah, I dare." I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, but I kept walking. Outside, I leaned against my car, breathing hard. My phone buzzed, another client cancellation. At this rate, I'd have to dip even deeper into my studio fund for the next payment. Rose followed me out. That was quite a show. Did you see her face? So desperate to catch someone helping her that she can't even see what's right in front of her. "Mia." Rose hesitated. "The investigator might be closer than you think. Maybe it's time to stop." I shook my head, watching through the window as Aunt Margaret gesticulated angrily at the investigator. "No, she needs to learn. Besides, I'm in too deep now." "And your studio? Your dreams?" I pulled out my phone, looking at my dwindling bank balance. Sometimes revenge costs more than money. As if on cue, a text from Camila appeared. "The investigator's requesting bank records next. Aunt Margaret's determined to expose whoever it is." I smiled grimly. "Let her try," I whispered, starting my car. "Let her try." The investigator, Hamza, cornered me outside my favorite coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. I'd just finished my third consecutive all-nighter, trying to make up for lost clients with new commissions. "Ms. Mia," he said, appearing beside me as I fumbled for my keys. "Do you have a moment?" I studied his carefully neutral expression. "Depends. Are you here as Aunt Margaret's bloodhound or as a paying client?" "I find it interesting," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken, "that your aunt's medical bills are being paid by someone whose financial patterns mirror yours exactly." "Really? Maybe they're just another hardworking person being judged by people who don't understand their choices. Or maybe they're draining their life savings for someone who doesn't appreciate it." I felt the color drain from my face. Before I could respond, Micah's voice cut through the tension. "Mia, there you are." He jogged up, placing himself between me and Hamza. "We're late for that meeting." Hamza handed me his card. "When you're ready to talk, call me." Inside my car, Micah turned to me. "Want to tell me what's going on? And don't say nothing. You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need coffee," I muttered, starting the engine. At a different cafe across town, I finally told him everything. The payments, the depleted savings, the gallery showing I'd had to pass up. "Are you insane?" he exploded, causing several heads to turn. "That's your entire studio fund." "Lower your voice," I hissed. "No, I won't. Do you know how long you've worked for that dream? And you're throwing it away on someone who— Who what? Who's dying? Who needs help? Who never gave a damn about your dreams?" My phone buzzed. Camila again. Aunt Margaret's in the hospital. Bad reaction to the treatment. She's asking for everyone. At the hospital, I found my mother in the waiting room, looking exhausted. She's stabilized, she said before I could ask. But she's different. Scared, I think. Inside the room, Aunt Margaret looked small against the white sheets, her eyes fixed on me as I entered. Come to see the show? Her voice was weak, but still carried that familiar edge. Your cousin tells me you've been too busy with work to visit lately. Finally finding a real job? Margaret, my mother warned. No, let her speak, I said, moving closer to the bed. Tell me, Aunt Margaret, what exactly is a real job to you? One that makes money? Because I make plenty. One that helps people? My designs are in children's hospitals. One that doesn't rely on handouts, she snapped, then started coughing. I handed her a water cup, my hand shaking. Like anonymous donations? Her eyes narrowed. Mr. Ortiz is close to finding out who's behind those. Then we'll see who's really... The monitor beside her bed started beeping rapidly. A nurse rushed in, ushering us out. In the hallway, I ran into Hamza again. Persistent, aren't you? I said. I'm good at my job, just like you're good at yours. He paused. The next payment is due tomorrow. Is that a question? An observation, along with the fact that you've been taking on small jobs at half your usual rate, desperate for quick cash, perhaps. Before I could respond, Rose appeared, pulling me aside. Your mother's looking for you. Also, Micah called. Said something about a solution for the studio fund? I shook my head. Tell him to drop it. Mia, you can't keep doing this. Look at yourself. When's the last time you slept? I'm fine. No, you're not. And neither is your business. Camila mentioned you lost the Thompson account. I leaned against the wall, suddenly dizzy. They wanted someone more... corporate. You mean someone who wasn't working through the night on rush jobs to make quick cash? The hospital lights seemed too bright, the corridor too narrow. I should check on Aunt Margaret. She's sleeping, my mother said, joining us. The nurse gave her something. But Mia, honey, you look terrible. When's the last time you ate? I waved off her concern, but as I turned to leave, the corridor tilted. Rose caught my arm. That's it, she said. I'm taking you home. In my apartment, I finally checked my bank balance. The next payment would leave me with barely enough for rent. My phone lit up with a text from Hamza. Your aunt's determination to find her benefactor is affecting her health. Perhaps it's time to end this game. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. On my desk, the gallery invitation sat unopened, mocking me with its promises of the future I was sacrificing. Another text arrived, this time from Micah. Found an investor for your studio. Real opportunity. Don't throw away your dreams for someone else's pride. I looked at my reflection in the window. Pale, exhausted, running on coffee and determination. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to stop. Then my phone rang again. Camila's number. Mia? She's asking for you, and she's got that investigator with her. I found Aunt Margaret sitting up in her hospital bed, looking more alert than she had in days. Hamza stood by the window, his expression unreadable. Camila hovered near the door, wringing her hands. Close the door, Aunt Margaret commanded. I stepped inside, letting it click shut behind me. You wanted to see me? Mr. Ortiz has been sharing some fascinating information. She gestured to a chair. Sit. I prefer to stand. Always defiant, she muttered. Mr. Ortiz, please tell my niece what you've discovered. Hamza cleared his throat. The anonymous donations are coming from someone who's recently liquidated several investments. Someone who's been taking on numerous small design projects at reduced rates. Someone who... If you have something to say, I interrupted, say it directly. Aunt Margaret's monitor beeped steadily in the silence that followed. Finally, she spoke. Are you behind these donations? Would it matter if I was? Answer the question. Like you answered my calls when I won that national design competition, or when I landed my first major client. My voice shook. Or maybe like you answered when I begged you to look at my portfolio before deciding I was worthless. Camilla gasped softly from her corner. Aunt Margaret's face flushed. "So it is you," she said. "You're the one making me look like a charity case." The door opened and Rose burst in. "Mia, don't—" "No," I cut her off. "Let's have this out." I turned back to Aunt Margaret. "You want to know the truth?" "Yes, I'm the one paying your medical bills. I'm the one working myself to exhaustion, taking every job I can find. I'm the one who gave up my dream of opening my own studio so you could have the best treatment available." The monitor's beeping increased. Hamza stepped forward, concerned. "Why?" Aunt Margaret whispered. "To humiliate me? Because despite everything, you're family. And because maybe, just maybe, it would show you that the niece you dismissed as worthless could do something meaningful." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Is everything okay in here? Her heart rate is elevated." "We're fine," Aunt Margaret snapped. "Leave us." The nurse hesitated, then withdrew. Camilla took her place by the door, looking ready to call for help if needed. "So," Aunt Margaret said, her voice dangerously quiet, "you thought you'd teach me a lesson? Play God with my life?" "No, Do you know what this means?" she continued. "Every treatment, every moment of hope, was built on lies, on your need to prove something." "That's not fair," Rose interjected. "Mia has sacrificed everything to help you." "Help me?" Aunt Margaret laughed bitterly. "She's helped herself to a grand gesture, nothing more. Well, I won't accept another penny. I'd rather die with dignity than live on her charity." The room spun slightly. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "Margaret," Hamza spoke up, "perhaps we should consider—" "Consider what? That my worthless niece has been playing puppet master? That she's probably laughing at me behind my back?" "I never laughed," I said quietly. "I cried. Every time I had to turn down an opportunity. Every time I stayed up all night working on cheap projects to make the payments. Every time I heard you mock my career while I was literally keeping you alive." Silence fell. Even the monitor seemed quieter. "Get out," Aunt Margaret finally said. "All of you, except Mr. Ortiz." In the hallway, Camila caught my arm. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have kept it secret?" She looked away. "I don't know." My phone buzzed. Micah again. "Investor meeting tomorrow. Last chance. Don't throw this away." Rose read the message over my shoulder. "Take it. You've done enough." "Have I?" I watched through the window as Aunt Margaret gestured angrily at Hamza. "Look at her. Still so angry, so sure she's right." "That's her problem, not yours," Rose said. "You've proved your point." "Have I?" I repeated. "Because it feels like I've just proved hers, that I'm exactly what she always said, someone who makes the wrong choices." Camila touched my shoulder. "She's asking for Mom, and she's telling Hamza to stop the investigation." "Why?" "She says there's no point now. The damage is done." I slumped against the wall, exhaustion finally hitting me full force. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from my bank. "Account alert, balance below minimum." Rose took my phone gently. "Come on, you need rest." As they led me away, I heard Aunt Margaret's voice through the door, talking to my mother who had just arrived. Did you know? Did you know your daughter was destroying herself to save me?" I didn't stay to hear the answer. Sometimes I was learning, revenge doesn't taste like victory at all. Sometimes it just tastes like tears and cold coffee and dreams turning to dust. 3 days after the revelation, I sat across from Micah and his investor contact in a sleek downtown cafe. My hands wrapped around a coffee cup I couldn't afford, trying to hide their trembling. "The space is perfect," Micah was saying. "Corner location, great light, reasonable rent." The investor, a woman named Diana, nodded. "And your portfolio is impressive. But I have concerns about your recent work history. These quick, low-budget projects." My phone lit up with Camila's name. I declined the call. "Those were temporary," I started to explain, but my phone buzzed again. This time, a text. "She's asking for you. It's important." "I'm sorry," I said, standing. "Family emergency." Diana's sympathetic smile didn't quite hide her disappointment. "Perhaps we should reschedule when things are more settled." Outside, Micah caught up with me. That was your chance, Mia. Your last chance. I know. I fumbled with my car keys. But she's asking for me. She's always asking for something. When does anyone ask what you need? I didn't answer, just drove to the hospital in silence. Outside Aunt Margaret's room, I found my mother and Camila waiting. She's with her lawyer, my mother said. Serena's been here for an hour. Through the window, I could see Aunt Margaret signing papers, her hand shaking but determined. Finally, the door opened. Serena emerged, nodding to me. She's ready to see you. Inside, Aunt Margaret looked different. The anger that had fueled her for days seemed to have drained away, leaving something else in its place. Sit, she said, patting the bed beside her. When I hesitated, she added, please. I perched on the edge of the mattress. If this is about the payments, This is about the will. She held up a hand when I tried to interrupt. No, let me finish. Hamza showed me everything. The hours you've been working, the opportunities you've turned down, the studio fund you emptied. I didn't do it for the will. I know, that's what makes it worse. She picked at her blanket. You did it because you're better than me, better than I ever gave you credit for. The door opened and Rose slipped in, followed by Micah. They must have seen my car in the parking lot. I spoke with Diana, Micah said. She might reconsider if... Who's Diana? Aunt Margaret asked. No one, I said quickly, but Micah pressed on. An investor. She was going to fund Mia's studio. The dream you called worthless. Micah, don't, I pleaded. No, he's right, Aunt Margaret said. I should hear this. Tell me about the studio. So I did. The words poured out. The business plan I'd spent years developing, the clients I'd lined up, the space I'd found. With each detail, her expression grew more pained. And you gave all this up? For me? The treatments were more important. She reached for the papers Serena had left. I've changed my will again, but more importantly, I've made some arrangements. Serena helped me access some investments I'd forgotten about. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm paying you back. Every penny you spent on my treatments, plus enough to lease that studio space for a year. The room swam before my eyes. Rose grabbed my arm to steady me. I don't want your money, I said. Too bad. Consider it my first investment in your business. She smiled weakly. Unless you think I'm not qualified to judge a real career? A laugh bubbled up, half sob. Using my own words against me? Learning from the best. She patted my hand. I was wrong about you, Mia. Wrong about everything. Micah stepped forward. I'll call Diana. Wait, I said. Aunt Margaret, are you sure? The treatments? Are working. Thanks to you, I got them in time. Now it's your turn. She looked around the room, at Rose and Micah hovering protectively, at my mother and Camila who had quietly entered. I've spent years tearing you down. Let me help build something for once. My phone buzzed. Diana's number. Aunt Margaret nodded at it. Answer. Put it on speaker. With shaking hands, I did. Diana's voice filled the room. Mia, I've been thinking about your proposal. So have I, Aunt Margaret cut in smoothly. And I'd like to discuss co-investing in my niece's studio. I believe you'll find her recent work history shows exactly the kind of dedication and character you're looking for. I stared at her as she handled the call with the same authority she'd always wielded, but this time using it to build me up instead of tear me down. After the call ended, she handed me the will papers. Read them later. For now, don't you have a studio to plan? I don't know what to say. Say you'll prove me right this time instead of proving me wrong. She squeezed my hand. And Mia, thank you. Not for the money, but for showing me what real strength looks like. For the first time in months, I felt myself smile. Really smile. Sometimes it turns out revenge doesn't end in victory or defeat. Sometimes it ends in something that looks surprisingly like healing. 1 month later, I stood in an empty storefront, sunlight streaming through the large windows. Paint samples covered one wall, and architectural plans lay spread across a folding table. The exposed brick stays, Aunt Margaret declared from her wheelchair. She'd insisted on coming to the space inspection, despite having just finished another round of treatment. I thought you said I had creative control, I teased. Creative, yes. Foolish, no. She wheeled herself closer to the windows. These need cleaning, but the light is perfect for your work. The door chimed as Micah entered, carrying coffee for everyone. Diana just called. The paperwork's ready to sign tomorrow. Speaking of paperwork, Aunt Margaret said, pulling an envelope from her bag. There's something we need to discuss. I took the envelope, recognizing Serena's law firm logo. More changes to the will? No, something else. She nodded toward the papers. Read it. Inside was a partnership agreement. My hands started shaking as I read the terms. You want to be a formal partner in the studio? Silent partner, she corrected. With one condition. Here we go, I muttered, but I was smiling. The studio needs a name. I propose Legacy Design Studios. Micah nearly choked on his coffee. That's actually perfect. Because you're leaving me your legacy? I asked. Because you taught me what legacy really means. She wheeled closer. It's not about money or status, it's about impact, the mark we leave on others' lives. The door chimed again. Rose entered with Camila and my mother carrying lunch. How's it going? Rose asked, setting down the bags. Aunt Margaret's trying to make me cry again, I said, waving the partnership agreement. Good tears this time, I hope, my mother said, starting to unpack the food. The best kind. I turned back to Aunt Margaret. But are you sure about this? Partnership is a big commitment. So was paying for my treatment. She took a sandwich from Camila. Besides, someone needs to keep you from painting everything in those awful modern colors. I thought you didn't know anything about art, I challenged. I'm learning, speaking of which. She pulled out her phone, showing me a local news article. Isn't this your mural they're featuring at the children's hospital? The others gathered around to look. It was the piece I'd done last year, the one she'd dismissed as doodling. They want to commission more, I admitted. I've been meaning to tell you. Tell me what? They want a piece for the oncology ward. I thought, maybe you could help me design it? The room went quiet. Aunt Margaret's eyes glistened. I'd like that, she said softly. Camila cleared her throat. Before everyone gets too emotional, there's something else. She handed me another envelope. From Hamza. The investigator? What does he want now? Inside was a simple note. Sometimes the best investigations reveal more than just facts. They reveal truth. Thank you for teaching me that. He's recommended me to 3 corporate clients, I explained to the questioning looks. Said they needed someone who understands the value of investment in people. Smart man, Aunt Margaret commented. Now about these color schemes. Oh no, Rose laughed. Here we go again. We spent the next hour arguing good-naturedly about design choices, sharing lunch, and planning the future. My mother watched it all with tears in her eyes. What? I asked her during a quiet moment. I just never thought I'd see this. She gestured between me and Aunt Margaret. You two, building something together. Neither did I, Aunt Margaret admitted. But sometimes our biggest mistakes lead to our best opportunities. She wheeled over to the windows again, looking out at the street. You know, I spent years thinking I knew what success looked like. I was wrong. Success isn't in the money or the status. It's in the legacy, I suggested. It's in the love, she corrected. Even when that love comes disguised as anonymous donations and midnight design work. Micah raised his coffee cup. To Legacy Design Studios? To family, Aunt Margaret countered. The kind you're born with and the kind you build. As everyone echoed the toast, I looked around the sun-filled space that would soon become my studio. Our studio. At Rose and Micah, who'd stood by me through everything. At Camila, who was finally seeing me as an equal. At my mother, who was learning to stand up for me. And at Aunt Margaret, who'd turned from my biggest critic to my strongest advocate. One more thing, Aunt Margaret said, pulling out another paper. The hospital board meeting is next week. They want to discuss the oncology ward mural. I took the liberty of scheduling us both to present the concept. Us both? Unless you don't want your silent partner's input? I hugged her, careful of the IV bruises on her arms. I think we're way past silent. She hugged me back, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes, it's the courage to keep loving, keep giving, keep believing in someone until they learn to believe in you, too. The morning of Legacy Design Studios' opening, I found Aunt Margaret already waiting outside, her wheelchair parked in front of the newly installed sign. Her hair was growing back, thin but determined, like spring grass after a hard winter. "You're early," I said, unlocking the door. "Couldn't sleep. Too busy thinking about color schemes." Inside, everything was ready. My designs lined the walls, including prints of the Children's Hospital murals. The oncology ward piece held center stage, a collaboration between aunt and niece that had brought tears to the hospital board's eyes. "Remember when you said I was wasting my potential?" I asked, adjusting a frame. "I remember being an idiot." She wheeled over to the reception desk, running her hand along the smooth wood. But look what came from that idiocy. The bell chimed as Diana entered. "Everything ready for the clients?" "First meetings start in an hour," I confirmed. Aunt Margaret insisted on being here for all of them. "Quality control," Aunt Margaret said primly. Diana smiled. "From what I've seen of your joint work, that's not a bad thing." More people started arriving. Rose and Micah with coffee and pastries, Camila with an armful of fresh flowers, my mother carrying a package wrapped in silver paper. "What's this?" I asked as she handed it to me. "Open it." Inside was a framed newspaper article about the studio opening, focusing on the unique partnership between aunt and niece. The headline read, "Local artist and business icon unite, a story of redemption and innovation." "Turn it over," Aunt Margaret instructed. On the back was a handwritten note. "To my niece, who taught me that true art isn't just what we create on canvas, but what we build in each other's hearts. Love, Aunt Margaret." "Don't you dare cry," she warned. "Your first clients will be here soon." The door chimed again. Hamza entered, followed by Serena. "Just wanted to wish you luck," he said. "Though from what I've investigated about your upcoming projects, you won't need it." "Still keeping tabs on us?" I teased. "Professional habit," he smiled. "Plus, someone needs to document this remarkable transformation." Serena stepped forward with a folder. "Speaking of documentation, the final partnership papers need signing." As Aunt Margaret and I signed, I noticed her hands were steady, stronger than they'd been in months. "The doctors say the treatments are working better than expected," she said, catching my look. "Turns out spite is a powerful motivator for recovery. I have to stick around to make sure you don't paint everything in neon colors." The first clients began arriving, a mix of corporate executives and nonprofit directors, all drawn by the studio's unique story and distinctive style. I watched as Aunt Margaret charmed them effortlessly, her business acumen complementing my creative presentations perfectly. During a brief break, Rose pulled me aside. "Look at her. I've never seen her so alive." "Me neither. It's like she's finally found her purpose." "Or maybe," Micah joined us, "you both have." The day flew by in a blur of meetings, celebrations, and possibilities. As evening approached, most of the guests had left, leaving just family and close friends. "I have something to show you," I told Aunt Margaret, leading her to a covered wall in the back office. "If it's another modern art piece, just look." I pulled away the cloth, revealing a gallery wall of family photos, old and new, spanning decades. In the center was a recent picture of Aunt Margaret and me in the hospital, heads bent together over mural sketches, both laughing at something now forgotten. "When did you take that?" she asked softly. "Camila did. Said she wanted to capture the moment we both finally saw each other clearly." Aunt Margaret reached out, touching the photo. "You know, I spent my whole life thinking I needed to leave a legacy of wealth and status. I never imagined my true legacy would come from the person I tried hardest to change." "Funny how life works out," I said. "Funny how love works out," she corrected, "even when it's hidden behind anonymous donations and stubborn pride." The setting sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across our new beginning. Outside, the sign for Legacy Design Studios caught the light, glowing like a beacon. "Ready to head home?" I asked. "Not yet." She wheeled back to the main space, where our first commissioned piece hung, a collaborative design that merged her business sensibility with my artistic vision. I want to stay a bit longer, to remember this moment. I understood. This wasn't just a studio opening. It was the opening of a new chapter for both of us. One where criticism had transformed into collaboration, where hurt had healed into understanding, and where revenge had somehow blossomed into redemption. "You know what the best revenge really is?" Aunt Margaret asked, as if reading my thoughts. "What's that?" "Living well enough to turn your enemies into family, and your family into something even stronger." I squeezed her shoulder gently. "Welcome to the family business, Aunt Margaret." "Welcome home, Mia," she replied. "Welcome home."
The first sign something was wrong came from Instagram. I was scrolling through my feed, double-tapping photos of perfectly plated dishes, when I saw it. Raylan's latest post, a familiar-looking dessert at Le Bernardin, topped with a distinctive chocolate work I'd recognize anywhere. The same dessert Harlan had claimed to eat alone at his business dinner 3 nights ago. I'm Zella, and as a food photographer and chef, I notice details others might miss. The way chocolate curls catch the light, the precise angle of a fork against bone china, the telltale signs of a shared dessert with 2 spoons carefully placed just so. My thumb hovered over the image. The timestamp matched. My stomach churned as I clicked through to Raylan's story, finding nothing but her usual carefully curated posts. But there it was, the edge of a man's watch in one frame. Harlan's watch, the one I'd given him for our 5th anniversary. "Hey babe," I called out, keeping my voice steady. "Did you run into Raylan at Le Bernardin the other night?" Harlan looked up from his laptop, his pause a fraction too long. "What? No. Why would you think that?" I watched his face, cataloging every micro-expression like I would the components of a complex dish. The slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way his eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Just wondering. She posted about being there the same night as your dinner." "Must have been a coincidence," he said, turning back to his screen. "Big restaurant, lots of people." I nodded, already pulling up my phone's tracking app, the one we'd installed years ago to share our locations, back when we actually cared about each other's safety. There it was, his location history, perfectly overlapping with Raylan's Instagram posts, not just at Le Bernardin, but at dozens of places over the past few months. "I'm heading to the studio," I said, gathering my camera bag. "Got that shoot for the new bistro on 7th. He barely looked up. "Have fun." Instead of going to my studio, I drove to Raylan's apartment building. My best friend of 15 years, the maid of honor at my wedding, the woman who'd held my hand through my father's funeral. Her car was parked in its usual spot, and right next to it, Harlan's BMW. I sat there for an hour, watching. When they emerged together, his hand on the small of her back, their quick kiss before parting ways, I didn't feel the explosion of rage I'd expected. Instead, a cold, calculated clarity washed over me. That evening, I prepared dinner as usual. Harlan came home late, claiming traffic was terrible. "How was your shoot?" he asked, loosening his tie. I plated his favorite pasta dish, the one I'd perfected during our honeymoon in Italy. "Actually, I've been thinking about hosting a dinner party. It's been ages since we've had everyone over." "Oh?" He took a bite, closing his eyes in appreciation. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just missing our friends. I thought we could invite the usual crowd. Jonah, Marcus, and Kate." I twirled pasta around my fork. "Raylan, of course." He coughed slightly. "Sounds nice. When were you thinking?" "Next Saturday? I'll handle everything. You know how I love planning these things." "Sure, whatever you want." He smiled, reaching for his wine glass. I watched him drink, already mentally crafting the menu for what would be my most important dinner service yet. Each course would tell a story, our story. From the first bite to the last, I would serve them all a taste of their own betrayal. Later that night, I called my sister Elena. "You're being awfully calm about this," she said, after I told her everything. "What good would screaming do?" I stirred honey into my tea, watching it dissolve. They think they're so clever, sneaking around, sharing desserts, playing their little game. Fine, let's play. Zella. I'm not going to poison anyone, if that's what you're worried about. I laughed softly. I'm just going to serve them exactly what they deserve. A perfectly planned, expertly executed dinner party, where every single detail matters. And then what? I thought about the way Raylin had hugged me last week, complimenting my new haircut while wearing the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. About how Harlan still kissed me goodbye each morning, tasting of lies and her lipstick. Then they'll learn what happens when you betray someone who knows how to turn a simple dinner into an unforgettable experience. I sipped my tea, already composing the guest list in my mind. You know what they say. Revenge is a dish best served in courses. Just be careful. Alina sighed. Don't let this consume you. Trust me, I said, opening my recipe journal to a fresh page. This will be my finest work yet. I began to write, each ingredient carefully chosen, each course designed to slowly, exquisitely unravel their carefully constructed deception. By the time I finished planning, the sun was rising, and I had crafted the perfect menu for their last supper as respected members of our social circle. You're going full Gone Girl on them, aren't you? Alina sat cross-legged on my kitchen counter, watching me sort through old photographs. Please, Amy Dunn was unhinged. I'm just being thorough. I held up a photo from 3 summers ago. Harlan, Raylin, and me at the Hamptons. Their body language was obvious now, the way they stood slightly too close, how his hand barely brushed her waist. Found anything interesting? I spread the photos across my marble countertop. Oh, plenty. Look at this one. I handed her a picture from Raylin's birthday last year. See how they're the only ones not looking at the cake? They're looking at each other. God, they weren't even trying to hide it, were they? They thought they were clever. I pulled out my phone, showing her the guest list. What do you think about the seating arrangement? Alina scrolled through the names. Jonah next to Raylin. That's cruel. You know he had a thing for her. Has. And he's also the most observant person we know. He'll pick up on every little detail. My phone buzzed. A text from Raylin. Can't wait for Saturday. Need me to bring anything? The audacity. Alina muttered, reading over my shoulder. I typed back, just yourself. Though maybe wear that blue dress you got last month, the one you wore to Le Bernardin. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, perfect. See you then. That'll keep her up tonight, I said, setting my phone down. Now, help me with these place cards. We spent the next hour writing names in elegant calligraphy, each card containing a hidden message, visible only under the right light. I'd learned the trick from a wedding photographer, invisible ink that appears when exposed to black light. What about this one? Alina held up a group photo from my wedding day. Raylin stood beside me in her maid of honor dress, her hand on Harlan's arm. 2 on the nose? Perfect for the slideshow. I took the photo, scanning it into my laptop. It'll play during dessert, right when the lights dim. The doorbell rang. Harlan wasn't due home for hours. Expecting someone? Alina asked. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. Jonah, right on time. I opened the door to find him holding a bottle of wine. You said you needed my help with something? Come in. I led him to the kitchen, where photos still covered every surface. I'm planning a dinner party. Jonah's eyes swept over the images, understanding dawning on his face. How long have you known? Long enough. I poured him a glass of wine. Question is, how long have you? He took a long sip before answering. I saw them at that new wine bar in Soho 2 months ago. They didn't see me. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Well, now you don't have to. I handed him an invitation. I need you there on Saturday. Can you handle that? Handle watching them squirm. He smiled grimly. With pleasure. But Zella, are you sure about this? It's going to burn every bridge. They lit the match first. I gathered the photos into neat piles. Besides, I'm not doing anything except serving dinner and showing some memories. If they react badly, that's on them. Alina cleared her throat. Show him the menu. I pulled out my recipe journal, flipping to the carefully planned courses. First, oysters with pomegranate mignonette. Harlan and Raylan's first secret dinner was at that oyster bar on 8th. Then the pasta they shared in Little Italy when they told me they were working late. Jonah leaned forward, reading. And the dessert. Le Bernardin's signature chocolate dish. I called in a favor from the pastry chef. He's recreating it exactly. You're not just exposing them, Jonah said slowly. You're making them relive every moment. While surrounded by all our closest friends. I closed the journal. They wanted to share meals behind my back. Fine, let's share everything. My phone buzzed again. Harlan. Stuck at work, don't wait up. I showed the message to Alina and Jonah. Want to guess where he really is? Alina pulled up Instagram, scrolling through Raylan's stories. There it was, a check-in at a rooftop bar downtown. At least they're consistent, Jonah muttered. I started gathering the photos, tucking them into a folder. Saturday can't come soon enough. Need help with anything else? Jonah stood, straightening his jacket. Just be there, and Jonah. I caught his arm. Sit next to Raylan, make her comfortable, make her talk. He nodded, understanding perfectly. I'll make sure she has plenty to say. After they left, I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of years of betrayal. My phone lit up with another text from Harlan. Missing you. Be home soon. I typed back, take your time. I'm busy planning our dinner party. It's going to be unforgettable. And it would be. They had no idea what was coming, but soon they'd taste every bitter bite of their betrayal. I opened my recipe journal again, refining each detail until every course was perfect. Like any good chef, I knew timing was everything, and on Saturday, the timing would be impeccable. The private dining room at Maison Rouge was perfect. Intimate lighting, dark wood panels, and most importantly, a state-of-the-art projection system, disguised as vintage wall sconces. I stood in the center, visualizing how everything would unfold. The screen will lower here, I explained to Marcus, the restaurant's manager and an old culinary school friend. During dessert, right? Right after I dim the lights. He gestured to the control panel, and the photos will play automatically. On a loop. Trust me, they won't need to see them twice. I pulled out my tablet, showing him the seating arrangement. I need Harlan and Raylan to sit here and here. Perfect view of the screen, but too far apart to whisper to each other. The door opened, and Sophie, the head chef, walked in carrying a tasting plate. First course sample, as requested. I examined the oysters, arranged in a perfect circle, with pomegranate seeds scattered like drops of blood. These are exactly what I wanted. But can we add just a touch more mignonette? I want it to bite. Like your revenge? Sophie smirked. Girl, when you told me what they did, I wanted to add ghost peppers to their plates. Too obvious. I adjusted a pomegranate seed with my fork. This needs to be subtle, elegant, like a slow poison. Speaking of poison, Marcus said, your husband called earlier to confirm the reservation. Asked if he could bring a bottle of wine. I laughed. Let me guess. A 2015 Bordeaux? How did you know? It's Raylan's favorite. She probably suggested it, thinking she was being helpful. I took a bite of the oyster. Perfect. Now show me the main course. Sophie disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a plate of handmade pasta in a dark truffle sauce. This is the exact recipe from Giorgio's in Little Italy. Took some convincing, but the old man finally shared his secrets. I twirled the pasta, remembering how I'd found the receipt from Giorgio's in Harlan's jacket pocket months ago. They shared this dish every Wednesday night, claiming they were working late. Want to know something interesting? Sophie leaned in. They were here last week, ordered the same pasta. My hand tightened around the fork. Did they look happy? They looked guilty, Marcus cut in. Kept checking their phones, jumping every time the door opened. Good, they should be nervous. I pulled out my phone, showing them the dessert photo from Le Bernardin. Can you recreate this exactly? Sophie studied the image. The chocolate work will be tricky, but yes. Want me to add anything special? Just make it identical. I want them to recognize it immediately. I stood, walking to the wall where the screen would descend. When the dessert arrives, that's when the photos start. Years of their little rendezvous, all their secret moments, played out for everyone to see. Zella, Marcus touched my arm. Are you sure about this? It's going to be brutal. They made their choice. I straightened a place setting. Now they get to own it publicly. My phone buzzed. A text from Raylin. Hey love. Quick question about Saturday. Is it okay if I bring my camera? Would love to capture the evening. She wants to photograph her own downfall. I showed them the message. How poetic. Sophie shook her head. The nerve of some people. I typed back, of course, you know me. Always love having memories to look back on. You're scary good at this, Marcus observed. I learned from the best. I gestured around us. They taught me how to lie with a smile. The kitchen door swung open again, this time revealing a sample of the appetizers. Delicate canapes, topped with caviar and gold leaf. These will be passed around during cocktail hour, Sophie explained. Right before you seat them for dinner. I picked one up, admiring the presentation. Remember to serve the special ones to Harlan and Raylin. The ones with the extra spicy wasabi hidden inside. Don't worry, they'll be marked. Perfect. I checked my watch. I should go. Harlan's cooking dinner tonight, probably trying to ease his conscience. At the door, Marcus caught my arm. Just be prepared. This could get ugly. It already is ugly, I replied. I'm just bringing it into the light. Driving home, I got another text, this time from Jonah. Ran into R at the grocery store. She's wearing the guilt-like perfume. Almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I smiled, typing back. Save your sympathy. She'll need it Saturday. Harlan was in the kitchen when I arrived, stirring something that smelled like his attempt at risotto. Hey, beautiful, where've you been? Just finalizing details for Saturday. I kissed his cheek, tasting the lie in his casual smile. Everything's coming together perfectly. Can't wait, he said, adding too much wine to the risotto. It's been too long since we've had everyone together. I watched him cook, this man who thought he could serve me mediocre risotto and mediocre lies. You're right, it's time everyone was in the same room again. No more secrets. He stirred faster, the rice sticking to the bottom of the pan. No more secrets, he echoed, not meeting my eyes. I smiled, thinking of the menu waiting at Maison Rouge. Each course designed to strip away their pretenses, bite by bitter bite. It's going to be a night to remember. The cocktail hour began exactly as planned. Harlan arrived first, adjusting his tie nervously in the restaurant's mirrored entrance. I watched him through the security feed on my phone, standing in the private dining room. He's here, Marcus announced unnecessarily. And he brought the wine. Let me guess, 2 bottles? 3, actually. 2015, Bordeaux, just like you said. I smoothed my black dress, checking my reflection. Raylan's favorite. He's planning to get her drunk enough to relax. The door opened, and Jonah entered, looking sharp in a navy suit. Ready for the show? Almost. Just waiting for our guest of honor. As if on cue, Raylan walked in, wearing the blue dress from Le Bernardin. She'd styled her hair differently, but the dress was unmistakable. I watched through the feed as she and Harlan carefully maintained their distance, their eyes meeting briefly before darting away. Showtime, I whispered, stepping out into the bar area. Zella, Rylin rushed forward, embracing me, her perfume, the one I'd given her, wrapped around us like a noose. This place is gorgeous. Isn't it? I hugged her back, feeling the tension in her shoulders. That dress looks even better than it did at Le Bernardin. She stiffened slightly, then forced a laugh. Oh, you saw that post? I meant to tell you about that dinner. No secrets between friends, right? I waved over a server with the canapes. Try these. They're specially marked for you and Harlan. The wasabi hit them 3 bites in. Harlan coughed, reaching for his water, while Rylin's eyes watered dramatically. Oh my God, she gasped. That's intense. Is it? I took a regular one, biting into it delicately. Tastes fine to me. More guests arrived. Couples we'd known for years, all part of our tight-knit social circle. I'd seated them strategically, ensuring maximum visibility for what was to come. Shall we move to the dining room? I gestured toward the double doors. Everyone's place cards are set. Harlan found his seat, frowning when he realized how far he was from Raylan. She sat between Jonah and Kate, looking increasingly uncomfortable as Jonah engaged her in conversation. "Remember that night at the wine bar in Soho?" I heard him ask her quietly. "You looked stunning in that red dress." Raylan's hand shook as she reached for her water. I don't recall. Really, it was just 2 months ago. You were there with..." The first course arrived, interrupting their conversation. Oysters gleamed under the soft lighting. Pomegranate seeds scattered like accusations across the plates. "These look familiar," Harlan commented, trying to sound casual. "They should," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're from that little place on 8th Street. You know the one, right, Raylan? With the amazing happy hour?" She dropped her fork. "I've never been there." "No?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. "That's strange, because I have this picture." Before I could show it, servers appeared with the wine. Harlan's Bordeaux being poured into Raylan's glass first. "Your favorite, isn't it?" I asked innocently. 2015 was such a good year. "How did you know it was her favorite?" Kate asked, looking between us. "Oh, Harlan mentioned it," I said smoothly. "Didn't you, honey?" He took a large gulp of his wine. "Must have." Jonah leaned closer to Raylan. "Speaking of wine, that bar in Soho had an amazing selection. What was it you were drinking that night? Something Italian." Raylan's napkin slipped from her lap. As she bent to retrieve it, a small envelope fell from beneath her place card. The first of many I'd hidden around the room. "What's this?" She opened it, color draining from her face as she read the note inside. "Lovely evening at Le Bernardin. The chocolate dessert looked divine, especially with 2 spoons." Her eyes met Harlan's across the table, panic flickering between them. I watched as she subtly shook her head at him, a silent warning. "Everything okay?" I asked, noting how neither had touched their oysters. "The pomegranate mignonette might be a bit strong. Like guilt, it tends to leave a bitter taste." The room had grown quieter, other guests picking up on the tension. Kate was looking between Harlan and Raylan with dawning comprehension, while her husband Marcus whispered something to Jonah. "Maybe we should have some music," Harlan suggested desperately. "Oh, don't worry," I smiled, nodding to Marcus at the control panel. "I have something special planned for later." Raylan's phone buzzed, another part of my plan. She checked it under the table, her face paling further at the message I'd scheduled. A photo of her and Harlan outside her apartment, his hand on the small of her back. "More wine," I offered, holding up the bottle she'd recommended to my husband months ago. "There's plenty to go around, just like friendship, right? Meant to be shared?" The oysters sat untouched, pomegranate seeds bleeding into the ice beneath them. The first course wasn't even over, and already their perfect facades were cracking. I caught Jonah's eye across the table, and he nodded slightly. Time for the next course. The pasta arrived steaming, the rich truffle aroma filling the room. Giorgio's signature dish, perfectly recreated down to the last detail. I watched as recognition flickered across both their faces. "This looks exactly like..." Raylan started, then caught herself. "Like what?" Kate asked, twirling her fork. "Nothing," Raylan mumbled, staring at her plate. "Oh, you mean like the pasta from Giorgio's," I offered helpfully. "The little place in Little Italy. They only serve this dish on Wednesday nights, I hear." Harlan's fork clattered against his plate. How did I what, darling?" I met his eyes steadily. "Know about your favorite Wednesday night spot?" The silence that followed was delicious. Around the table, our friends were starting to exchange glances, pieces falling into place. "Speaking of Wednesday nights," Jonah chimed in, right on cue. "Wasn't that your late meeting night, Harlan? The standing appointment with those clients from Boston. Before Harlan could respond, servers appeared with fresh wine glasses. As they leaned between guests, they discreetly placed more envelopes beside certain plates. Raylan found hers first, a receipt from Giorgio's, dated 3 weeks ago, with her lipstick mark still visible on the napkin I'd retrieved from her purse during our last lunch date. You know what's funny? I continued, taking a deliberate bite of pasta. I always wondered why you came home smelling like truffles after those client meetings. Kate picked up her envelope next, gasping softly as she read its contents. She passed it to her husband, who shook his head in disgust. Zella, Harlan warned, his voice low. What are you doing? Just sharing memories, honey. Isn't that what friends do? I nodded to Marcus, who dimmed the light slightly. The wall behind Harlan and Raylin, illuminated with a photo, them entering Giorgio's together, his hand on her waist. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m. last Wednesday. Oh my God, someone whispered. Raylin stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. But you haven't finished your pasta, I said sweetly. It's your favorite, isn't it? The same dish you two shared every Wednesday while I worked late on my cookbook. This is inappropriate, Harlan started, but Jonah cut him off. You know what's inappropriate? He pulled out his phone. Meeting your best friend's wife at wine bars in Soho. Want to see the pictures I took that night? You knew. Raylin whirled on him, tears streaming down her face. Everyone knew, Kate said quietly. We just couldn't believe you'd do this to Zella. The pasta steamed between us, forgotten. On the wall, the photos continued, a silent documentary of their betrayal. Them leaving her apartment building, sharing dessert at Le Bernardin. Quick kisses in dark corners they thought no one could see. When? I asked, my voice carrying in the hushed room. When did it start? Neither answered. Their silence spoke volumes. Was it that weekend in the Hamptons, 3 summers ago? I gestured to the next photo appearing on the wall, when you thought I was too busy with my camera to notice how close you stood. Harlan pushed his plate away. This is childish, Zella. If you knew, you should have said something privately. Privately? I laughed, the sound sharp as a knife. Like how you privately fucked my best friend. Like how you privately shared meals and wines and secrets while I trusted you both? Raylin sank back into her chair, sobbing quietly now. Jonah didn't move to comfort her. I have to go, she choked out. But dessert hasn't been served yet, I said. It's a special recreation from Le Bernardin. Your favorite chocolate dish, the one you shared 3 nights ago. More photos appeared on the wall. A progression of their relationship, told through stolen moments and secret meetings. Our friends watched in horrified fascination. How long have you known? Harlan demanded. Long enough to collect every receipt, every photo, every little breadcrumb you two left behind. I took another bite of pasta. It's amazing what people notice when you're too busy gazing into each other's eyes to see them. I can explain, Raylin tried. But Kate cut her off. Save it. We've all seen enough. The pasta grew cold on their plates, untouched like their excuses. Around the table, years of friendship crumbled like parmesan. The main course will be served soon, I announced, as if this were any normal dinner party. I hope you saved room. It's another of your favorites, the salmon, from that place in Brooklyn where you celebrated your 6-month anniversary last month. Harlan's face went white. How could you possibly know about that? I smiled, raising my glass. Let's just say I'm not the only one who's good at keeping receipts. Right, Jonah? The lights dimmed further as servers cleared the pasta plates. In the semi-darkness, I could see Raylin and Harlan's world collapsing, one course at a time. And we weren't even at dessert yet. The salmon arrived under silver domes. Each plate, a perfect recreation of their secret anniversary dinner. As servers lifted the covers in unison, more envelopes fluttered onto the table. Hotel receipts this time, from their weekend business trips. You know what I find interesting? I swirled my wine, watching the color catch the light. How you both always ordered room service for two. Stop this, Harlan pleaded, his facade finally cracking. Just stop. Why? Are you uncomfortable? Imagine how I felt finding these in your jacket pocket. I nodded to Marcus, who projected the hotel bills onto the wall. The champagne charges are particularly fascinating. Kate picked up one of the receipts. The Plaza, on my birthday. You said you couldn't come to my party because you were sick, Raylan. I can explain. Raylan whispered, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Please do. Jonah leaned back, arms crossed. Explain how you've been sleeping with your best friend's husband. For how long exactly? The silence stretched like pulled taffy, bitter and dark. 18 months, I answered for them. Since that charity gala, where you both disappeared for an hour. Remember that night, Harlan? You came home with lipstick on your collar. The same shade Raylan's wearing right now. More photos appeared on the wall. Security camera stills from the hotel lobby. Date and timestamps clear as day. Their pathetic attempts at discretion. Entering separately, but always within minutes of each other. Jesus Christ, someone muttered. Did you think no one would notice? I cut into my salmon. Or did you just not care? Raylan's phone buzzed again. Another scheduled message. She didn't even check it this time, just sat there trembling. Check your phone, Ray, I insisted. It might be important. Like that text you sent Harlan last week about missing his touch. Her head snapped up. You hacked my phone? No need. You used my laptop to check your messages last month. Forgot to log out of your email. I smiled. Amateur mistake. The salmon sat untouched on their plates, just like their guilt sat heavy in the air. I trusted you, I continued, my voice steady. Both of you. You were my maid of honor, Raylan. You stood next to me and watched me marry him. Was that when it started? Were you already fucking my husband when you helped me pick out my wedding dress? No, she burst out. It wasn't. We never meant. To get caught? Jonah finished. Because that's the only thing you're really sorry about, isn't it? Harlan stood suddenly, his chair scraping back. This is enough. We're leaving. Sit down, I commanded. And to my satisfaction, he did. We haven't even gotten to the best part yet. More photos appeared, a timeline of their betrayal. Them leaving work events early together. Secret meetings in coffee shops. Quick kisses in parking lots. I have to admit, I continued, you were thorough. Separate credit cards for hotel rooms, different restaurants each week. But you forgot one thing. What's that? Harlan asked, his voice hoarse. I'm a food photographer. I notice details, like how you always ordered the same wine, always split dessert, always sat in dark corners, thinking no one could see you. I gestured to the wall of evidence behind them. But someone always sees. Kate stood up, throwing her napkin down. I can't be here for this. Marcus, her husband nodded, standing with her. We'll send you the gift we were going to bring to your anniversary party next month, Harlan. Though I guess that's canceled now. One by one, other guests began to leave. Each exit, another nail in their social coffin. Wait, Raylan called out desperately. Please, let me explain. Explain what? Kate turned back. How you betrayed someone who loved you. How you smiled in our faces while sleeping with her husband. Save your explanations for your therapist. Soon only Jonah remained with us, watching as Harlan and Raylan sat in stunned silence. You know what the worst part is? I said, finally pushing my plate away. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just disappointed in how predictable you both are. The cheap hotel rooms, the secret texts, the lies about working late. If you knew, Harlan started, why didn't you just confront us? And miss this dinner, please. I stood, smoothing my dress. Besides, I wanted everyone to see exactly who you are. No more hiding in dark corners. Raylan's phone buzzed one final time. She checked it mechanically, then dropped it like it burned her. What is it? Jonah asked. Screenshots, she whispered, of every message we ever sent each other. I took the liberty of forwarding them to everyone in our contact lists, I announced. They should be receiving them right about now. Their phones began lighting up with notifications, messages from friends, family, colleagues, their carefully constructed world of lies crumbling with each incoming text. "Dessert will be served in 5 minutes," I said pleasantly. "I hope you saved room. It's a very special recreation from Le Bernardin." The chocolate dessert arrived under spotlights, identical to the one they'd shared at Le Bernardin. The delicate chocolate work caught the light, casting shadows across their stricken faces. "Look familiar?" I asked, as servers placed the plates before them. The pastry chef was very helpful when I showed him your Instagram post, Ray Lynn. He remembered you two specifically, said you seemed very intimate. Harlan pushed his plate away. "I can't do this anymore." "But it's your favorite," I insisted. "You loved it so much, you went back 3 times last month, always on Tuesday afternoons, always when I had my cooking classes." Raylan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She finally turned it off, hands shaking. "My mother just texted," she whispered. "She saw the messages." "Oh, right." I took a delicate bite of chocolate. "I made sure to include your parents in the distribution list. And your boss. He seemed particularly interested in all those sick days you took together." Jonah leaned forward. "You know what I don't understand? Why keep coming to group events? Why risk being seen?" "Because they thought they were smarter than everyone else," I answered for them. "They thought their little codes and signals were clever, like how Raylyn would always wear red when she wanted to meet up." Harlan's head snapped up. "How did you know about that?" "The same way I knew about the hotel room numbers you'd text her disguised as work addresses, or the way you'd schedule fake client meetings in your shared calendar." The chocolate on their plates began to melt, much like their composure. "I have to call my lawyer." Harlan reached for his phone. "Already taken care of," I smiled. "I sent him quite a comprehensive file this morning. He's dropping you as a client, by the way. Something about moral clauses." Raylan started sobbing again. "My job, my reputation. Should have thought about that before sleeping with your best friend's husband." Jonah's voice was ice cold. "What did you think would happen?" The lights dimmed further, and the projector whirred to life one final time. But instead of photos, a video began playing. Security footage from their various meetups, expertly edited together like a tragic romance movie. "I had help from the IT guy at your office, Harlan," I explained. "Turns out, he doesn't approve of affairs either, especially since his wife left him for her boss last year." The video showed them entering and leaving hotels, sharing intimate moments in parking lots, all time-stamped and crystal clear. "Turn it off," Harlan begged. "Why? This is your story. Don't you want to see how it ends?" The final clip was from 3 days ago. Them arguing outside Raylan's apartment. The audio was clear enough to hear their fight about whether to tell me. "You said you were going to leave her." Raylan's voice echoed through the speakers. "You promised." "I never promised that," Video Harlan replied. "I can't. It's complicated." Present-day Raylan stood up so quickly, her chair fell backward. "You told me you loved me." "He tells that to all his mistresses," I said quietly. "Ask his secretary from 2 years ago. Or should I play that footage next?" Harlan's face went from red to white. "There's no other footage?" "Of course there is. I've spent months collecting everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every single time you thought you were being careful." I gestured to the screen. "This is just the highlight reel. I'll lose everything," Rylin whispered. "Funny how consequences work, isn't it?" Harlan stood, finally finding his voice. "You've made your point, Zella. What do you want? Money? The house?" "I don't want anything from you," I replied calmly. "I just wanted everyone to see the truth. No more secrets, remember." The chocolate desserts sat melting, forgotten symbols of their deceit. On the screen, their past indiscretions played on loop, a monument to their betrayal. "My sister's waiting outside," I continued. "She'll drive you both home, separately, of course, though I doubt either of you has a home to go to after tonight." Jonah stood straightening his jacket. I'll walk them out, make sure they don't try to spin this into something it's not. As they walked toward the door, broken and exposed, I called out one last time. Oh, and Harlan. The divorce papers are being delivered tomorrow. I took the liberty of copying our entire prenup to the first page. The infidelity clause is highlighted. He stopped, shoulders slumping. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Almost. I picked up my phone, showing them the screen. I'm just trying to decide which photo to use for my statement to the press. Your law firm's PR team is eager to get ahead of the story. They left without another word, their footsteps echoing through the empty restaurant. Jonah returned a few minutes later, sitting beside me. He paused, searching for words. Justified? I suggested, finally allowing myself to smile. Because dessert isn't even the best part. There's more? I pulled out an envelope. The board meeting at his firm tomorrow morning, where these photos will be discussed in great detail. Turns out, sleeping with clients' wives is frowned upon in corporate law. The chocolate desserts remained untouched, melting into pools of dark regret. The morning sun streamed through my studio windows as I adjusted the lighting for my latest shoot. My phone buzzed, another news alert about Harlan's law firm. The headlines were getting creative. Top attorney's career melts faster than wedding cake. You're trending again, Alina announced, walking in with coffee. The video from the dinner has over 1 million views. Good. I checked the composition of my shot. How's Raylan doing with her new job search? Not great. Turns out most companies check social media these days. She handed me my coffee. Her parents made her move back home to Connecticut. The studio door opened, and Jonah walked in, carrying a familiar-looking dessert box. Special delivery from Le Bernardin. I laughed. The chocolate thing again. Actually, it's better. He opened the box, revealing an elegant cake. They want you to photograph their new dessert menu. Apparently, your dinner party story impressed the chef. Karma's got a sense of humor, Alina mused. My phone buzzed again. A text from Kate. Just drove past your old house. Moving trucks are there. He's really leaving. Speaking of karma, I showed them the message. The prenup worked exactly as planned. Did you ever think about just confronting them privately? Jonah asked, setting up his laptop. Instead of, destroying them publicly? I adjusted my camera settings. They chose to betray me publicly. Every dinner out, every hotel stay, every lie to our friends. That was their choice. I just made sure everyone saw the whole picture. Speaking of pictures, Alina pulled up a website on her tablet. Raylan's photography business is officially closed. Her clients all canceled after seeing the video. She should have stuck to Instagram filters, I murmured, focusing my lens. The studio door opened again. Marcus and Sophie from the restaurant. You'll never guess who just tried to make a dinner reservation. Marcus grinned. Harlan said he wanted to apologize. What did you tell him? That we're booked solid for the next century. Sophie set down a bag of pastries. Also, we're launching a new special. Called it The Sweet Revenge. It's selling out every night. My phone lit up with another message. From Harlan's law firm. Ms. Wilcox, we'd like to discuss featuring your photography in our rebranding campaign. Our new focus is on integrity and transparency. Now that's ironic. Jonah laughed, reading over my shoulder. Should I take it? I asked, already knowing the answer. Absolutely, Alina said. Charge them triple your usual rate. The morning light caught the lens of my camera, casting prism patterns across the studio wall. Like evidence of betrayal, they formed a perfect timeline of shadows and light. You know what the best part is? I adjusted my tripod. I never raised my voice, never threw anything, never even cried. I just showed everyone who they really were. Through food, Sophie added, which is honestly the most chef thing ever. Through truth, I corrected. The food was just the medium. My phone buzzed one final time. A notification that the divorce was officially filed. No contests, no delays, just Harlan's signature on every page, exactly where it needed to be. So what now? Jonah asked, helping me set up the next shot. Now, I smiled, focusing my lens on the Le Bernardin cake. Now I do what I've always done. Create beautiful things, tell stories through food, and never settle for mediocre love or lukewarm pasta. And the house? Alina asked. Selling it. Already have 3 offers. I checked the light meter. Turns out, people love a good scandal location. The studio filled with morning light and possibility. On my laptop, another email notification popped up. A major publishing house interested in my story. From food photography to private investigation, a recipe for revenge. You're not actually going to write it, are you? Marcus asked. I thought about all the messages I'd received from other women, thanking me for showing them how to reclaim their power without losing their dignity. Maybe. I adjusted the cake's position slightly. But first, I have a dessert menu to shoot. Sophie, can you move that chocolate curl about 2 millimeters to the left? Perfectionist, she teased, but did as asked. I looked through my viewfinder, focusing on the intricate details of the dessert, like evidence, like truth, like revenge. Sometimes the smallest details made the biggest impact. Ready? I asked my assembled friends, each of whom had played their part in my elaborate dinner theater. They nodded, gathering around to watch me work. Through my lens, the dessert looked perfect, each element in its place, nothing hidden, everything exactly as it should be. I pressed the shutter, capturing the moment in perfect clarity, like justice, like karma, like the truth. Some things just needed the right light to be seen. Perfect shot, Jonas said, looking at the preview. It always was, I replied, already setting up the next one. You just had to know where to look.
The train ticket trembled in my hand as I stood on the platform, my entire life packed into 2 oversized suitcases. Behind me, I could still hear Ishmael's taunting voice echoing through 15 years of torment. Wide load coming through. The memory made me grip the ticket tighter, my knuckles turning white. I'm Gwendolyn, and this was the day I decided to stop being the family punching bag. Gwen, my mother's voice cut through the station noise. I turned to see her rushing towards me, her face flushed. You're being dramatic. Come home, and we'll talk about this like adults. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like adults? When have any of you treated me like an adult? Just yesterday, during what was supposed to be my graduation celebration dinner, Ishmael had made yet another fat joke. Better order 2 chairs for Gwen, he'd said, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. Dad had chuckled. Mom had pursed her lips in that way she always did, pretending she hadn't heard anything. Your brother just jokes around, Mom said now, reaching for my arm. That's what siblings do. I stepped back, keeping her at arm's length. No, Mom, that's what bullies do. You're being sensitive, she insisted. What will people think? Your father is respected in this community. How will it look when they find out his daughter ran away? The train whistle blew, and I felt a surge of relief. That's exactly the problem, I said, picking up my bags. You're more worried about what people will think than how I feel. Gwendolyn! This time it was my father's voice, authoritative and stern. He was striding across the platform, Ishmael trailing behind him with that smirk I'd grown to hate. Look who's finally grown a backbone, Ishmael called out. Though it's hard to see under all that. Finish that sentence, I snapped, surprising even myself with the venom in my voice. I dare you. For once, Ishmael fell silent. Young lady, you will come home this instant, Dad commanded, using the same tone that had cowed me countless times before. This behavior is unacceptable. No, what's unacceptable is how you've let him treat me, I said, gesturing toward Ishmael. What's unacceptable is how you've all pretended it wasn't happening. What's unacceptable is that I had to get straight A's, join every club, and win every competition just to feel like I was worth something, while he got praise just for existing. The train doors opened with a hiss. Other passengers began boarding, giving our family drama a wide berth. You're my daughter, Dad said, his voice softening slightly. Of course you're worth something. Really? Then why didn't you ever stand up for me? My voice cracked, but I forced myself to continue. Why didn't you stop him? Why didn't anyone stop him? Mom started crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. We love you, sweetheart. We just didn't want to make things worse. Worse than what? I asked, stepping onto the train. Worse than making your daughter feel worthless in her own home? Come on, Gwen, Ishmael said, rolling his eyes. You're being ridiculous. It was just jokes. Jokes are supposed to be funny, I replied, my voice steady now. And one day, Ishmael, you're going to learn that actions have consequences. The doors began to close. Dad moved forward, but it was too late. If you leave like this, he warned, don't expect to come back. I met his eyes through the glass. That's the plan. As the train pulled away, I watched my family grow smaller on the platform. Mom was still crying. Dad looked angry, and Ishmael was laughing, probably already thinking about how he'd tell this story to his friends. My cousin Barrett had slipped me the contact information for his friend in the city, promising me a place to stay until I got on my feet. It wasn't much, but it was more support than I'd gotten from my immediate family in years. I found my seat and pulled out my phone, deleting my family's numbers one by one. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. They say success is the best revenge, and I was going to succeed so spectacularly that they'd choke on their words. The countryside began to blur past the window, and with each mile, I felt the weight of their expectations and judgment lifting from my shoulders. I was done being the fat sister, the embarrassment, the family joke. From now on, I would write my own story, and I promised myself, the next time they saw me, they wouldn't be laughing. Girl, you're not thinking big enough. Georgia's voice boomed across our tiny dorm room as she paced, her curly hair bouncing with each step. We're not just talking about opening another basic gym. We're talking about revolutionizing how people think about wellness. I looked up from my business textbook, raising an eyebrow. It had been 2 years since I'd stepped off that train, and meeting Georgia in Business 101 had changed everything. She was the first person who saw me, really saw me, not just my size. Revolution sounds expensive, I said, closing my book. And in case you haven't noticed, we're broke college students. Georgia flopped onto my bed, nearly knocking over my laptop. That's where you're wrong. We have something better than money. We have perspective. You've lived both sides of this story, Gwen. You know what it's like to feel judged, to feel like you don't belong in those fancy fitness spaces. I flinched, remembering the time Ishmael had bought me a gym membership for Christmas, wrapping it in front of the entire family. Thanks for the trauma flashback. No, listen. Georgia sat up, her eyes sparkling with excitement. That's exactly what I mean. What if we created a space where nobody feels judged, where wellness isn't about fitting into some perfect mold, but about feeling strong and confident? My phone buzzed. Another ignored call from Mom. 3 months ago, she'd started her campaign to bring me to my senses. I declined the call. Someone from home? Georgia asked softly. Just spam, I lied, then changed the subject. So tell me more about this revolution of yours. Georgia jumped up and grabbed her notebook. Picture this, a wellness company that focuses on mental health as much as physical health. Classes, coaching, community support, but with zero shame, zero judgment. And you're the perfect person to lead it. I snorted. Me? The girl who couldn't even stand up to her own brother until 2 years ago? Exactly you. Georgia grabbed my shoulders. Because you understand what it feels like to be on the outside. You know what people need to hear, what they need to feel. Plus, you're literally acing every business class we take. Just then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from my cousin Barrett. Heads up, Ishmael just got promoted at the bank. Mom says Aunt Jessica won't shut up about it. Everything okay? Georgia asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. Golden Boy strikes again, probably didn't even earn it. Dad's golf buddy is on the board. Georgia read the text, then looked at me with that determined expression I'd come to know well. You know what? This is perfect timing. While they're all celebrating his mediocrity, we're going to build something amazing. She grabbed her laptop and opened a new document. Let's do this right now. What would you have wanted to hear when you were at your lowest? What would have made you feel strong instead of broken? For the next few hours, we brainstormed. The ideas flowed faster than we could type them. By midnight, our vision had taken shape. Empowered Wellness, a company that would combine physical fitness with emotional healing. We'll need startup capital, I said, finally allowing myself to believe this could be real. Already thought of that, Georgia grinned. Remember Professor Martinez, the one who keeps praising your business proposals? He runs a startup incubator. I may have already mentioned our idea to him. You what? He wants to meet with us next week. Georgia looked entirely too pleased with herself. Said something about how the wellness industry is ready for disruption? I sat back, my mind racing. This is crazy. We're still students. Mark Zuckerberg was a student when he started Facebook. Georgia countered. And you're twice as smart as him. My phone buzzed again. Another family update from Barrett. Ishmael just bought a new BMW. Wouldn't stop bragging about it at Sunday dinner. I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. All my life I'd tried to shrink myself, to take up less space, to be less noticeable. But maybe Georgia was right. Maybe it was time to do the opposite. Okay, I said, straightening my shoulders. Let's do it. Let's build something that would have helped that scared girl on the train platform 2 years ago. Georgia squealed and hugged me. That's my girl. And hey, who knows? Maybe one day your brother will need a job and you'll be the one in charge. We both laughed at the absurdity of it. After all, Ishmael was the successful one, the one with the banking career and the fancy car. The idea that he'd ever need my help seemed impossible, but life, as I would learn, has a funny way of evening the score. And that's why Empowered Wellness is projecting a 40% growth this quarter, I concluded, standing before our board of directors. Any questions? The boardroom remained silent, impressed by our latest numbers. 5 years after that late-night brainstorming session with Georgia, we'd grown from a startup to a national wellness brand with 20 locations across the country. After the meeting, Georgia caught up with me in my office. Killing it as usual, CEO, she said, now my chief operating officer and still my best friend. Though you might want to check your email. Your cousin Barrett's been trying to reach you all morning. I opened my laptop, finding 3 urgent messages from Barrett. Before I could read them, my office phone rang. Gwen, thank God, Barrett's voice came through. Have you seen the news about Metropolitan Bank? My stomach dropped. That was Ishmael's bank. No, what happened? Major layoffs. They're cutting 30% of their workforce. Ishmael, he's one of them. I sat back in my chair, letting that sink in. How bad is it? Bad, Barrett sighed. He's been living way above his means. The BMW, the penthouse apartment, the expensive habits. He's got maybe 2 months of savings, tops. Georgia, who'd been pretending not to listen, raised an eyebrow. That's not all, Barrett continued. Remember that golf buddy of Uncle Abraham's who got Ishmael the job? Retired last year. Ishmael's been coasting, and well, his performance reviews weren't great. Nobody's jumping to hire him. I rubbed my temples. Why are you telling me this, Barrett? Because he's going to reach out to you, soon, and I thought you should be prepared. As if on cue, my email pinged. From Ishmael Emerson. Subject, can we talk? Speak of the devil, I muttered. He just emailed me. What are you going to do? Barrett asked. I stared at the email notification. I'll let you know when I figure it out. Thanks for the heads up. After hanging up, I opened Ishmael's email. Gwen, I know we haven't spoken in years. I've been seeing news about your company's success. I'm in a tough spot and could really use your help. Could we meet? Ishmael. Well, 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 Georgia said, reading over my shoulder. How the mighty have fallen. He doesn't even apologize, I noted. Typical. Are you going to meet him? I spun in my chair to face the wall-to-wall windows of my corner office. Below, the city sprawled out, filled with empowered wellness billboards featuring people of all sizes celebrating their strength. We'd built this company on the principle that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or background. You know what's ironic? I said. We're actually hiring for several positions right now. Georgia's eyes widened. Oh no, 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 no. You can't seriously be considering? We pride ourselves on giving people second chances, I replied, turning back to my computer. It would be hypocritical to exclude my own brother. Your brother who tormented you for years, who never apologized, who might finally learn what it feels like to be on the other side, I finished. Besides, we have the strictest anti-bullying policies in the industry. One wrong move and HR will have his head. Georgia crossed her arms. I don't like it, but I trust you. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Make him work for it. Really work for it. I smiled, already composing my reply. Ishmael, I can meet you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come to the Empowered Wellness Headquarters, 47th floor. Ask for me at reception. Gwendolyn. Short, professional, no hint of emotion. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. You're really doing this, Georgia said, shaking her head. I'm really doing this. I pulled up our company directory. Get Kayla from HR in here. If we're doing this, we're doing it by the book. As Georgia left to fetch Kayla, I found myself staring at the framed magazine cover on my wall. 30 under 30, Gwendolyn reshapes wellness industry. The article had called me a visionary, praised our inclusive approach, highlighted our success. My phone buzzed. A text from Barrett. He's telling everyone you agreed to meet. Mom and Dad are already talking about how family always comes through. Be careful. I texted back, trust me, because while they were all assuming I'd give Ishmael an executive position, something worthy of the golden child, I had other plans. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and I was finally in a position to deliver it. The question was, would Ishmael be humble enough to accept what I was about to offer? At exactly 2 p.m., my assistant buzzed. Your brother is here. I took a deep breath. Send him in. The door opened, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. Gone was the designer suit and cocky smile. Ishmael looked deflated. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Gwen, he said, then corrected himself. Gwendolyn, thank you for meeting with me. Have a seat. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, noticing how his eyes darted around my office, taking in the awards, the view, the obvious success. He sat fidgeting with his watch, the expensive one he'd bragged about on social media last year. You've done well for yourself. I have, I replied simply. Barrett mentioned you're looking for work. His face flushed. I didn't realize you were in touch with Barrett. There's a lot you don't realize. I kept my voice neutral. Tell me why you're here, Ishmael. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know we haven't exactly been close. That's one way to put it. I made mistakes, he admitted, though the words seemed to pain him. I was young, immature. You were cruel, I corrected. Deliberately and consistently cruel. For years. His jaw tightened. Is that why you agreed to meet? To remind me what a terrible brother I was? No. I pressed a button on my phone. Kayla, could you join us? Moments later, Kayla from HR entered, tablet in hand. Ishmael straightened in his chair, obviously expecting an introduction to a potential colleague. Kayla is our HR manager, I explained. She'll be conducting your interview. Interview? Ishmael's eyes widened. I thought, given our relationship, I cut in. You should be grateful I'm considering you at all. We have an entry-level position open in our customer service department. Starting salary is $42,000 a year, with benefits after 90 days. The color drained from his face. 42? Gwen, I was making 6 figures at the bank. And now you're making 0. I stood up. Kayla will interview you. If she thinks you're suitable, and if you're willing to start at the bottom like everyone else, we'll have you shadow our top customer service representative for 2 weeks. After that, assuming you meet our standards, we'll discuss a permanent position. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. I have an MBA. So do half our employees, I replied. The difference is, they earned their positions. They weren't handed them by Dad's golf buddies. That hit home. He slumped in his chair, the fight leaving him. I can't survive on $42,000. Then sell the BMW, downsize your apartment, do what normal people do when they need to rebuild. I moved toward the door. The choice is yours. Take the interview or leave. But if you leave, don't expect another offer. As I reached for the handle, he spoke again. Wait. His voice cracked. I'll take the interview. I turned back. One more thing. We have strict policies about workplace behavior. Any form of bullying, harassment, or discrimination will result in immediate termination. No exceptions, no matter who your sister is. Are we clear? He nodded, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Good luck, I said, and left him with Kayla. Georgia was waiting in the adjacent conference room, watching through the one-way glass. That was ice cold, she said admiringly. Think he'll actually go through with it? He's desperate enough. I watched as Kayla began the interview. And he needs to learn. Learn what? That actions have consequences. That you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to help you. That maybe, just maybe, the little sister he tormented grew up to be someone worth respecting. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Heard you're giving Ishmael a job. So proud of you for helping family. I showed it to Georgia, who rolled her eyes. They still don't get it, do they? They will, I said, watching Ishmael struggle through Kayla's behavioral interview questions. Eventually. An hour later, Kayla came to find me. He's qualified, technically speaking, but he'll need a lot of coaching on emotional intelligence and customer service skills. And I think it might be good for him. She smiled. Nothing teaches empathy like having to help people all day while saying thank you and please. I nodded. Set him up with training, and Kayla, make sure his trainer is Emiliano. Kayla's eyes sparkled with understanding. Emiliano was not only our best customer service rep, but also a former fitness model who'd left the industry after experiencing body shaming. He'd be perfect for teaching Ishmael about respect and dignity. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone. Sometimes it's about forcing them to grow. Welcome to our annual company retreat, I announced to the gathered employees at the mountain resort. This year's theme is breaking barriers, building bridges. From my position on the small stage, I could see Ishmael in the back row, sitting alone. 3 weeks into his customer service training, and the reports from Emiliano had been surprisingly positive. Though he'd struggled initially, he hadn't complained or quit. After the opening ceremony, Georgia nudged me. Heads up, your brother's heading this way. Ishmael approached cautiously, wearing the same company t-shirt as everyone else, a far cry from his designer suits. Can we talk? Privately? I nodded, following him to a quiet corner of the resort's garden. The mountain air was crisp, and somewhere in the distance, a bird called. "I get it now," he said quietly, staring at the ground. "What you're doing?" "Do you?" "The first week, I had a customer." He swallowed hard. She was crying because her previous gym had kicked her out for not losing weight fast enough. She reminded me of you back then, and I realized I was just like those people who hurt her. I stayed silent, letting him continue. Emiliano told me about his modeling days, about the pressure to look perfect. He said something that hit home. The people who hurt others are usually the ones most afraid of being hurt themselves. "Were you afraid, Ishmael?" I asked, genuinely curious. He laughed bitterly. "Terrified. Dad had such high expectations. If I wasn't perfect, I was nothing. So I made sure everyone looked at you instead of me." "That's not an excuse." "No," he agreed. "It's not. I was cruel, and I can't change that. But watching you now, the way you've built this company, how you treat people, how they respect you." "I'm sorry, Gwen. I'm so sorry." A group of employees walked past, laughing about the upcoming team-building activities. One called out, "Great customer satisfaction scores this week, Ishmael." He smiled, looking surprised at the recognition. "That's another thing. Here, people care about what you do, not who you know or how you look." "That's the whole point," I said. "Everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. Even terrible brothers? Especially terrible brothers who are trying to change." Suddenly, Emiliano's voice called out from behind us. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need our star customer service trainee for the trust fall exercises." I watched as Ishmael's face shifted from embarrassment to determination. "Coming." He turned back to me. "Thank you, Gwen, not for the job, but for for showing me a better way." As he walked away with Emiliano, Georgia appeared at my side. "Well, that was unexpected. Think he means it?" "Look." I pointed to where Ishmael was now helping a plus-size employee adjust her safety harness for the trust fall, showing genuine patience and care. "That's not the same person who used to moo at me in high school hallways." My phone buzzed. Dad calling. I declined it. "Still not ready?" Georgia asked. "They need to understand first," I said. "Really understand." Later that evening, during the campfire session, I watched as Ishmael voluntarily stood up to share during the Moments of Growth segment. "I used to be someone else," he began, his voice shaking. "Someone who thought putting others down made me bigger. Someone who hurt the person who should have been my closest ally. My sister." The crowd grew quiet. Most knew I was his sister, but no one had heard the full story. But working here, seeing how strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down, it's changed me. To my sister, he looked directly at me. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for the chance to earn it." The silence was deafening. Then Emiliano started clapping, and others joined in. I felt tears pricking at my eyes but held them back. After the session, Emiliano approached me. "You know, when you asked me to train him, I thought you were crazy. But he's actually becoming one of our best advocates for body positivity and respect." "People can surprise you," I replied, watching Ishmael chat with a group of colleagues, his posture relaxed, genuine. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Barrett. "Mom says Ishmael hasn't been to Sunday dinner in weeks. Says he's always working or studying customer service manuals. What did you do to him?" I smiled, typing back, "I didn't do anything. He's doing it himself." Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's giving someone the opportunity to face their own reflection and choose to become better. The question was, would it last? "He's having trouble with Marcus from accounting," Kayla reported during our weekly HR meeting. "Apparently, Marcus knew someone who worked with Ishmael at the bank." I set down my coffee. "What happened?" Marcus has been sharing stories about how Ishmael used to treat junior employees. It's creating tension in the break room. Georgia, who'd been quietly typing notes, looked up. Should we intervene? Before I could answer, there was a knock at my office door. Emiliano entered, looking concerned. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to hear this. He played a recording from that morning's customer service call monitoring. Ishmael's voice came through, remarkably patient as he handled an irate customer. Sir, I understand your frustration, he was saying. I used to judge people based on their appearance too, but I was wrong, and I hurt people I cared about because of it. Maybe this is a chance for both of us to learn. The customer's tone gradually shifted from hostile to reflective. By the end of the call, he'd signed up for our inclusive fitness program. That's the third call like this week, Emiliano said. He's turning our most difficult customers into advocates. While being ostracized by his co-workers, Kayla added. I stood up, walking to the window. Where is he now? Break room, Emiliano replied. It's not pretty. I headed down to the 10th floor, where I could hear raised voices before I even reached the break room. Must be nice, Marcus was saying, having your sister own the company. Is that how you got away with treating people like garbage at the bank too? I'm not that person anymore. Ishmael's voice was quiet but firm. People don't change, Marcus scoffed. They just get better at hiding who they really are. I stepped into the room. Everyone froze. Actually, Marcus, I said, people do change. When they want to, when they work at it, when they face consequences and learn from them. Marcus straightened. Ms. Gwendolyn, Tell me, I cut him off. Did you know I was fat in high school? The room went silent. I was, and Ishmael, he was my biggest bully. Made my life hell. So believe me, I understand your skepticism, but I also believe in what we stand for here. Growth, change, second chances. I turned to address the whole room. Yes, Ishmael is my brother. No, that's not why he's here. He started at the bottom, just like everyone else. And yes, he used to be exactly who you think he was. But the man standing here now, he's choosing to be better. Isn't that what we tell our clients every day? That it's never too late to change? Marcus looked down, embarrassed. I'm sorry, I heard stories. The stories are probably true, Ishmael said. I was awful, entitled, cruel. I can't change that past, but I can choose who I am now. Just then, my phone rang. Mom again. For the first time in months, I answered. Gwendolyn, finally. We haven't seen Ishmael at family dinner in 2 months. What are you doing to him? I put the phone on speaker. Nothing, Mom. He's choosing this. Choosing what? To work in customer service? It's beneath him. Your father's friends are asking questions. Mom, Ishmael interrupted, loud enough for her to hear. Stop. This job isn't beneath me. Nothing about helping people is beneath anyone. Ishmael, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm learning more here than I ever did at the bank. I'm saying I'm finally becoming someone I can be proud of. The line went quiet. Then, this isn't like you. No, he agreed. It's not like the old me, and that's good. I ended the call looking around the break room. Every face showed a mixture of surprise and respect. Back to work, everyone, I said softly. As people filed out, I caught Ishmael's arm. You okay? He nodded. You know what's weird? For the first time in my life, I don't care what they think. Mom, Dad, their friends. I care about what I think of myself. That's called growth, Emiliano said, appearing in the doorway. And speaking of growth, we have a team meeting about the new sensitivity training program. You're leading it, remember? Ishmael's eyes widened. Me? Who better to teach about the impact of words than someone who's learned it firsthand? As I watched Ishmael follow Emiliano, Georgia appeared beside me. You know, she said, this revenge plan of yours might have backfired. How so? Instead of making him suffer, you might have actually helped him become a decent human being. I smiled. Maybe that's the best revenge of all. Ladies and gentlemen, Ishmael stood at the podium during our quarterly all-hands meeting. 6 months ago, I sat where you're sitting, thinking I was too good for this job. I couldn't have been more wrong. The auditorium was packed with employees from all our locations, gathered for our biggest announcement yet. Georgia squeezed my hand as Ishmael continued. Many of you know I'm the CEO's brother. What you might not know is that I used to be her biggest bully. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I was the kind of person who made others feel small to make myself feel big. The kind of person who thought appearance determined worth. He paused, taking a deep breath. But life has a way of teaching us lessons. When I lost my banking job, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen to me. Instead, it was the best, because it brought me here, where I learned what real strength looks like. From my seat in the front row, I watched our employees' faces. Many were nodding, some were wiping tears. Yesterday we hit a milestone, Ishmael announced. Our customer satisfaction scores are the highest in the industry. Not because we're perfect, but because we understand struggle. We understand growth. We understand second chances. Georgia stood up, and that's why we're excited to announce our new initiative, Second Chances Program. Ishmael, would you like to explain? He smiled. We're partnering with rehabilitation centers and unemployment offices to offer job training and placement services, because everyone deserves the chance I got, the chance to become better. The applause was deafening. As Ishmael stepped down, my phone lit up with a text from Dad. Saw the company live stream. We need to talk. Before I could respond, another message came through from Mom. Your father and I are in the lobby. My heart stopped. Georgia saw my face and grabbed my phone. Oh shit, she whispered. Want me to get security? No, I said, standing. It's time. I found them by the reception desk, Dad in his golf clothes, Mom clutching her designer purse. They looked out of place among our diverse, casually dressed employees. What are you doing here? I asked. We saw the broadcast, Dad said stiffly. Wanted to see this operation for ourselves. Gwendolyn, Ishmael's voice called out. He jogged over, then stopped short. Mom? Dad? Look at you, Mom said, eyeing his company polo and khakis. Working in customer service. What will people think? They'll think I'm doing honest work, Ishmael replied. Making a difference. A difference? Dad scoffed. By helping fat people feel good about themselves? The lobby went quiet. I saw Emiliano step forward, but Ishmael held up a hand. No, Dad, he said firmly. By helping people understand their worth isn't determined by their size, their background, or their father's golf buddies. How dare you, Dad started, but Ishmael continued. I used to be just like you, judgmental, cruel, caring more about appearances than actual worth. But Gwen, he looked at me. She gave me a chance to learn better, to be better. By humiliating you? Mom demanded. By showing me respect, Ishmael corrected. Something I never showed her, something you never taught me to show her. Dad's face reddened. We gave you everything. You gave me permission to be awful. I finally spoke up. You taught him it was okay to hurt me as long as he looked good doing it. We never, Mom began. You did, Ishmael interrupted. Every time you laughed at my jokes, every time you told her to toughen up, every time you chose my success over her pain, security had quietly positioned themselves nearby, but they weren't needed. Dad looked around the lobby, at the employees watching, at the wall of success stories showing transformations both physical and emotional. This is really what you want? he asked Ishmael. To work for your little sister? No, Ishmael said. I want to work with my sister. There's a difference. And yes, this is exactly what I want. Mom started crying. Dad put his arm around her, looking lost. I think you should go, I said quietly. But when you're ready to really talk about everything, you know where to find us. As they left, Emiliano approached. You okay? Actually, I said, surprised to find it was true. I am. Both of us are. Ishmael nodded. For the first time, I feel free. Georgia appeared with a tablet. Well, good, because the Second Chances program already has 50 applications. Ready to review them? Together? Ishmael asked me. I smiled. Together. Because sometimes karma doesn't just come full circle. It opens up entirely new paths, leading to places you never expected to find healing. And the Wellness Industry Innovation Award goes to Empowered Wellness's Second Chances program. The ballroom erupted in applause as Ishmael and I walked to the stage together. Under the bright lights, I could see our team cheering. Georgia, Emiliano, Kayla, and dozens of others who'd made this possible. Thank you, I began, gripping the podium. But the real winners are our program participants. People who, like my brother and me, discovered that change isn't just possible, it's transformative. Ishmael stepped forward. When my sister offered me a job, I thought it was revenge. Instead, it was redemption. And now we've helped over 500 people find their own path to redemption. As we left the stage, Georgia rushed up with her phone. Your parents just posted on LinkedIn. You might want to see this. The post showed a photo of us accepting the award with the caption, Proud of our children, Gwendolyn and Ishmael, for showing us what real success looks like. We were wrong. We're learning. Proud parents, or second chances. They posted that publicly? Ishmael whispered. There's more. Georgia scrolled down. They've signed up for our family counseling program. I felt my throat tighten. When? This morning. Your dad specifically requested Marcus as their wellness coach. I couldn't help but laugh. Marcus, who'd once confronted Ishmael about his past, had become one of our most effective counselors for families dealing with body-shaming issues. Speaking of family, Emiliano appeared, straightening his tie. Your cousin Barrett is here, and he brought guests. Barrett emerged from the crowd, followed by Mom and Dad. They looked different, humbler somehow. Dad wasn't wearing his usual golf attire, and Mom's designer purse was nowhere in sight. We watched the live stream of your speech, Dad said, his voice rough, about how parents can either enable growth or enable destruction. It hit home, Mom added, twisting her hands. We've been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of talking, too, Barrett chimed in. They haven't missed a single counseling session. I felt Ishmael tense beside me. And we're sorry, Dad said, the words seeming to cost him physical effort. We're sorry for creating an environment where cruelty was celebrated, where appearance mattered more than character. We're learning, Mom added. It's not easy facing your mistakes, but you two, you showed us it's possible. Georgia cleared her throat. The press wants photos of the award winners. Should I tell them to wait? No, I said, surprising everyone. Actually, let's do a family photo, all of us, including Barrett, who never gave up on any of us. As we posed, I heard whispers in the crowd. Everyone knew our story. It had become part of the company's legend. The bully brother, the hurt sister, the transformation that sparked a movement. One more thing, Dad said after the photos. We'd like to invest in the Second Chances program, not to control it, he added quickly, seeing my expression, but to help it reach more families like ours. Ishmael looked at me. Your call, CEO. I studied our parents' faces, seeing something I'd never seen before, genuine humility. Okay, I said, but you'll need to go through the proper channels, starting with a meeting with our head of family services. Who's that? Mom asked. Ishmael grinned. Me, as of this morning. Their surprise turned to pride. Real pride, not the superficial kind they'd once valued. Later, as the event wound down, I found myself on the venue's balcony with Emiliano. Below, I could see Ishmael explaining our program to a group of investors, his passion evident in every gesture. You know, Emiliano said, when you hired me to train him, I thought you were either crazy or cruel. And now? Now, I think you're something else entirely, something better. What's that? A catalyst. You didn't just get revenge or find success. You created a space where people could become their best selves, even the ones who hurt you most. Through the glass doors, I could see our parents talking with Marcus, actually listening. Georgia was showing Barrett the expansion plans. Everything had changed, yet somehow felt exactly right. Ready to head back in? Emiliano asked, offering his hand. I hear your brother's about to announce the national rollout of our family reconciliation centers. I took his hand, feeling the weight of my journey, from that scared girl on the train platform to this moment, settle into something like peace. You know what? I am ready. I'm finally ready for all of it. Because sometimes the best endings aren't really endings at all. They're new beginnings, built on the foundation of everything we've learned, everything we've overcome, and everything we're brave enough to become.